My sister gave us a smart crib camera for Christmas. I never plugged it in. Good thing too, because when my husband analyzed it, we discovered it was programmed to spy on us, send recordings to my sister's phone, and alert her every time I said words like pregnant or doctor. But that's not even the worst part. She'd been running a fake fertility blog about my supposed struggles for months, making money off strangers who thought she was supporting her infertile sister. Plot twist, I was never even trying to get pregnant. You know that feeling when everything seems perfect on the surface, but there's this tiny voice in the back of your head whispering that something's not quite right. That was me, Marina, sitting by our living room window on a crisp October afternoon in 2023. The maple tree outside had just started turning those brilliant shades of orange and red that make New England autumns absolutely magical. I had my favorite worn copy of The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo in my lap, but honestly, I hadn't turned a page in 20 minutes. I was lost in thought, watching the leaves dance in the gentle breeze, when I heard Lucas's Honda Civic pull into our driveway. The familiar sound of his car door slamming shut made me smile. After 3 years of marriage, some things never get old. The way he always kicks off his work shoes at the front door with a dramatic sigh. The way he immediately loosens his tie before he even says hello. These little rituals had become the soundtrack of our life together. "Honey, I'm home," he called out, and I could hear the grin in his voice. Lucas always says it like he's in some 1950s sitcom, and it never fails to make me laugh. "In here," I called back, bookmarking my page and setting the novel on the coffee table. Through our open-concept living space, I could see him hanging his jacket on the coat rack by the door. Even after a long day analyzing cybersecurity threats for his company, he still managed to look handsome in that slightly rumpled end-of-workday way. He walked over and planted a soft kiss on the top of my head, his hand briefly squeezing my shoulder. "How was your day, beautiful? Did you finish that presentation for the marketing team?" I work as a freelance graphic designer, mostly for small businesses around our area, and lately I'd been putting in some pretty long hours on a rebranding project. "Almost done. Just need to tweak a few color schemes, and we should be good to go." I tilted my head back to look at him. But enough about work. How was your day? Any exciting cyber threats to report? Lucas chuckled and walked around to sit on the couch next to me, immediately reaching for the TV remote. "Oh, you know the usual. Someone in accounting clicked on a suspicious email link and suddenly everyone thinks the world is ending." He paused, glancing at me with that concerned expression I'd grown to recognize. Actually, speaking of suspicious things, I got 3 different alerts today about people trying to hack into home security systems. Baby monitors, doorbell cameras, even smart appliances. It's getting pretty wild out there. "That's terrifying," I said, pulling my legs up under me on the couch. I mean, who wants to watch someone's random Tuesday evening routine? You'd be surprised. Some people are making serious money selling access to private footage, or even just information about people's daily habits. It's a whole underground market. He shook his head, that familiar furrow appearing between his eyebrows that always showed up when he talked about work. The worst part is most people have no idea it's happening. They install these devices thinking they're making their homes safer, but they're actually making themselves more vulnerable. I felt a little chill run down my spine, but I tried to shake it off. Well, good thing we don't have any fancy smart gadgets, just old-fashioned locks and the world's most persistent smoke detector. Lucas laughed, the tension in his face relaxing. "Remember when it went off last month because you burned that grilled cheese?" "Hey, that was not burned. That was artisanally caramelized," I protested, giving him a playful shove. "And you ate every bite, so you can't complain." We settled into our usual evening rhythm. Lucas channel surfed while I curled up against his side, half watching whatever cooking show he'd landed on and half thinking about nothing in particular. This was my favorite time of day, when the afternoon light started to fade, and our little house felt like the coziest place in the world. We'd painted the living room walls this warm sage green color last spring, and with our mismatched but comfortable furniture and the collection of plants I'd been slowly accumulating, it really felt like home. "Oh, before I forget," Lucas said, muting the TV during a commercial break. My mom called earlier. She wants to know if we're still planning to come to dinner on Sunday. Apparently, she's making that lasagna you love. The one with the three different cheeses? I perked up immediately. Lucas's mom, Patricia, was an amazing cook, and her lasagna was legendary in their family. That's the one. She's also inviting my brother and his new girlfriend, so it should be a full house. I was about to respond when my phone started buzzing on the coffee table. The caller ID showed my sister's name, Camila. I hesitated for just a moment, long enough for Lucas to notice. You going to answer that? He asked gently. I picked up the phone, swiping to accept the call. Hey Camila, what's up? Marina, perfect timing. My sister's voice came through the speaker with that particular brand of enthusiasm that always made me slightly nervous. Camilla had this way of sounding excited about everything, even when she was about to ask for a favor or deliver bad news. I was just thinking about you and Lucas. How are you guys doing? We're good, I said, glancing at Lucas, who was watching me with that perceptive look of his. Just got home from work and trying to decide what to make for dinner. Oh, that's actually perfect because I was calling to invite you both to Sunday dinner at Mom and Dad's. They're making that big spread. You know how Mom gets when she decides to cook for the whole family. There'll be pot roast mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, the works. I felt my stomach do a little flip. Family dinners at my parents' house were always complicated. Don't get me wrong, I love my family, but there's something about being in that house, sitting around that same dining room table where I'd grown up that always made me feel like I was 15 years old again, and not in a good way. That sounds nice, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. What time were you thinking? Around 4. That way we can hang out beforehand, maybe let Ethan play in the backyard if the weather's nice. Ethan was Camilla's 3-year-old son, and he was absolutely adorable. He was also one of the few reasons I genuinely looked forward to family gatherings. I'll have to check with Lucas, but I think we can make it work. Great. And Marina. There was something in Camilla's tone that made me tense up. I'm really glad you guys are coming. I feel like we haven't had a good chance to really talk in forever. Just the two of us, you know. That was definitely code for something. With Camilla, there was always subtext, always some deeper conversation. She wanted to have some topic she'd been thinking about that she'd eventually work up the courage to bring up. Usually it involved either money relationship advice or some family drama I'd managed to stay out of until that point. Sure, I said, though I could feel my shoulders starting to tense. That sounds good. Perfect, I'll see you both on Sunday. Oh, and tell Lucas I said hi. Will do, see you Sunday. I hung up and immediately felt Lucas's eyes on me. He had this uncanny ability to read my moods, especially when it came to my family. After 3 years together, he'd learned to recognize the subtle signs of my discomfort. Everything okay? He asked, reaching over to gently squeeze my hand. I sighed, leaning back against the couch cushions. Yeah, it's fine. Camilla invited us to dinner at my parents' house on Sunday. That's nice. You don't sound thrilled about it, though. I am. It's just... I paused, trying to figure out how to explain the complicated feelings I had about my family without sounding ungrateful or dramatic. You know how Camila gets sometimes. She has this way of making everything sound casual and fun, but there's always something else going on underneath. Lucas nodded thoughtfully. He'd been to enough family gatherings by now to understand the dynamics. What do you think she wants to talk about? I honestly have no idea. Could be anything. Maybe she and Jake are having problems again. Maybe she needs money. Maybe Mom said something that upset her. I rubbed my temples, feeling a familiar headache starting to form. Or maybe I'm just overthinking it and she genuinely wants to catch up. Hey, Lucas said, shifting so he could look at me directly. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together. Okay? And if things get weird or uncomfortable, we can always make an excuse and leave early. This was exactly why I'd fallen in love with Lucas. He never made me feel like my concerns were silly or unwarranted. He just accepted that my family could be challenging and offered his support without question. You're right, I said, already feeling better. And besides, your mom's lasagna will have to wait. We can't pass up mom's pot roast. Now you're talking, Lucas grinned. Plus, I haven't seen Ethan in a while. I bet he's gotten huge. He's probably going to want you to play that monster game again, I warned. The last time we'd visited, Ethan had convinced Lucas to chase him around the backyard while making growling noises. It had been adorable, but Lucas had been sore for days afterward. I'm prepared this time. I've been doing my stretches. I laughed, feeling the tension from the phone call finally starting to fade. This was what I loved about our life together. Even when things got complicated or stressful, Lucas had this way of making me feel like everything would be okay. We spent the rest of the evening in comfortable domesticity. Lucas made his famous spaghetti and meatballs while I worked on finishing up that presentation. We ate dinner while watching a rerun of The Office, debating for the 100th time whether Jim and Pam were actually couple goals or just seemed perfect because the bar was set so low by the other relationships on the show. Later, as we were getting ready for bed, I found myself thinking about the phone call again. There had been something in Camilla's voice, an undercurrent of excitement that felt different from her usual enthusiasm, like she was planning something or knew something I didn't. Lucas, I said as I was brushing my teeth. He was already in bed scrolling through his phone. Do you think I'm paranoid about my family? He looked up from his phone, considering the question seriously. I think you're protective of yourself, which is totally normal and healthy. Your family loves you, but they also have a tendency to make you feel responsible for managing everyone else's emotions. I rinsed my mouth and walked back into the bedroom. When did you get so wise about family dynamics? 3 years of marriage to you, plus that psychology elective I took in college, he said with a grin. Come here. I climbed into bed, next to him, immediately gravitating toward his warmth. Our bedroom was small but cozy, with string lights hung around the windows and photographs from our travels scattered on the dresser. It was our sanctuary, the place where all the outside noise and stress couldn't reach us. I love you, I said, settling against his chest. I love you too, he murmured, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. And whatever Camila wants to talk about on Sunday, remember that you don't have to fix everything. Sometimes people just need to be heard. As I drifted off to sleep, I tried to hold on to that feeling of security and peace. Our little house, our quiet life, the simple pleasure of falling asleep next to someone who truly understood me. But somewhere in the back of my mind, that tiny voice was still whispering. Something was coming. I just didn't know what yet. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of Lucas moving around in the kitchen. Sunlight was streaming through our bedroom curtains, and for a moment everything felt perfectly normal. I stretched, enjoying the warmth of our flannel sheets, and checked my phone. 7:30 a.m. Lucas would be leaving for work in about 20 minutes. I padded out to the kitchen in my pajamas and found him standing at the counter fully dressed in his work clothes, holding 2 travel mugs of coffee. Good morning, beautiful, he said, handing me one of the mugs. I made it extra strong today. Figured you might need it after staying up late working on that presentation. You're a saint, I said, taking a grateful sip. Lucas made the best coffee, not too bitter with just the right amount of cream. Did you sleep okay? Like a baby? You, on the other hand, were tossing and turning, still thinking about Sunday. I hadn't realized I'd been restless, but it made sense. My subconscious had probably been churning over that phone call all night. Maybe a little. I'll be fine once I get some work done and stop overthinking everything. Lucas kissed my forehead before grabbing his keys from the hook by the door. Text me if you need anything, okay? And remember, Sunday is just dinner with family. Nothing more complicated than that unless you let it be. After he left, I settled into my home office with my coffee and laptop. Working from home had its perks, but it also meant I had to be disciplined about staying focused. Today, though, I found myself staring out the window more than usual, watching the leaves continue their slow dance toward the ground. My phone buzzed with a text from Camila. So excited for Sunday. Been thinking about you so much lately. Hope you're doing well. Heart emoji, heart emoji. I stared at the message for a long moment. Since when did Camila send me random thinking of you texts? We usually only communicated when we were making plans or when there was some kind of family situation that required coordination. This felt different. I typed back. Looking forward to it too. See you Sunday. But as I hit send, that uneasy feeling in my stomach intensified. I couldn't shake the sense that I was missing something important, some piece of a puzzle I didn't even know I was supposed to be solving. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering back to my family, to the subtle tensions and unspoken expectations that always seemed to hover around our gatherings. Maybe Lucas was right, and I was just overthinking things. Maybe Camilla really did just want to catch up. But deep down, I knew better. In my family, nothing was ever that simple. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself thinking about all the times Camilla had called with seemingly innocent invitations that turned into something much more complicated. The birthday party, where she'd spent the entire time complaining about her marriage. The Christmas gathering, where she'd cornered me in the kitchen to ask for a loan. The baby shower, where she'd made comments about how lucky I was to not have kids yet, because I could still focus on my career. Each memory carried its own particular sting, its own moment of realization that I'd been set up for a conversation I hadn't agreed to have. But this time felt different somehow, more loaded, more intentional. I glanced at the clock, 4:30 p.m. Lucas would be home in about an hour, and then we'd have the weekend to ourselves before Sunday's dinner. Whatever Camilla wanted to discuss, whatever family drama was brewing, I'd deal with it when the time came. For now, I just wanted to finish my work. Maybe cook something nice for dinner and enjoy the quiet peace of our little house while it lasted. Sunday arrived with one of those perfect New England autumn days that looks like it belongs on a postcard. The sky was crisp and blue. The air had that sharp bite that makes you want to wrap yourself in a cozy sweater, and every tree in the neighborhood was showing off its fall colors like nature's own fireworks display. Lucas and I pulled into my parents' driveway around 4 o'clock, and I immediately felt that familiar mix of affection and anxiety that always hit me when I came home. Their house was a classic colonial with white clapboard siding and black shutters surrounded by the kind of mature oak and maple trees that made the property feel like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting. Mom had already decorated for fall. There were pumpkins arranged on the front steps, corn stalks tied to the porch columns, and a wreath of orange and burgundy leaves hanging on the front door. "Looks like your mom went all out this year," Lucas observed as we walked up the brick pathway. He was carrying a bottle of wine we'd picked up on the way over some mid-range Pinot Noir that we hoped would pair well with pot roast. "She always does," I said, taking a deep breath of the crisp air. "Remember last year when she had those hay bales delivered just for decoration? Dad complained about it for weeks, but he still helped her arrange them perfectly around the front yard." Before we could even ring the doorbell, the front door swung open and my mom appeared already beaming at us. Patricia Santos had one of those warm, welcoming faces that made everyone feel instantly at home. She was wearing her favorite fall sweater, a soft burgundy cardigan that brought out the color in her cheeks, and her graying hair was pulled back in that effortless style she'd perfected over the years. "Marina Lucas, you're right on time." She immediately pulled me into one of her signature hugs, the kind that lasted just a beat longer than necessary and always smelled like vanilla and cinnamon. "I was just telling your father that you'd probably be the first ones here. Come in, it's getting chilly out there." We followed her into the foyer, and I was immediately hit with the scent of home. Pot roast garlic, something sweet, baking in the oven, and that underlying smell of the house I'd grown up in. You know how every house has its own unique scent. This one was furniture polish. My dad's aftershave, the lavender sachets my mom kept in all the closets, and 30 years of family dinners and holiday gatherings. "Where's Dad?" I asked, hanging my jacket on the coat rack that had been in the same spot by the front door for as long as I could remember. "In the living room arguing with the television about the Patriots game," Mom said with a fond eye roll. You know how he gets during football season. Lucas, honey, why don't you go rescue him? I think he needs someone who actually understands what's happening on screen. Lucas grinned and headed toward the living room, leaving Mom and me alone in the hallway. She immediately turned to me with that focused attention I remembered from childhood, the look that said she was about to ask me something important. "How are you doing, sweetheart? Really doing? You look a little tired." "I'm fine, Mom. Just been working a lot lately. Had a big project that I finally finished on Friday." "Good, good. You work too hard, though. You need to make sure you're taking care of yourself." She paused, and I could see her choosing her words carefully. "Speaking of taking care of yourself, have you been to the doctor recently? For a checkup, I mean." And there it was, the question I'd been expecting and dreading in equal measure. My mom had a way of bringing up certain topics that made it clear she'd been thinking about them for a while, probably discussing them with my dad or Camila. "I'm fine, Mom. Had my annual physical a few months ago. Everything looked good." "That's wonderful, dear. I just worry you and Lucas have been married for 3 years now. And I know you're both settled and happy, and She trailed off, clearly trying to find a diplomatic way to say what she was thinking. Before I could respond, we heard car doors slamming in the driveway, followed by the sound of a toddler's excited voice. "Ethan." Which meant Camila and her husband Jake had arrived. "That's my grandson," Mom said, her whole face lighting up as she hurried toward the front door. You know how Ethan gets when he hasn't seen his grandparents in a while. The front door opened, and Camila walked in first, looking effortlessly put together in the way that always made me slightly envious. She was wearing dark jeans, knee-high boots, and a cream-colored sweater that probably cost more than my entire outfit. Her long, dark hair was styled in perfect waves, and her makeup looked like she'd just stepped out of a salon. Behind her came Jake, carrying a squirming Ethan, who was already reaching toward my mom with grabby hands. "Grandma, Grandma!" Ethan squealed, launching himself from Jake's arms into Mom's waiting embrace. "There's my sweet boy," Mom practically glowed as she caught him covering his chubby cheeks with kisses. "Look how big you've gotten. I swear you've grown 3 inches since I saw you last week." Camila smiled at the reunion, then turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Marina, you look great." She pulled me into a quick hug, the kind where you barely touch and it's over before it really starts. "I'm so glad you guys could make it." "Thanks for organizing this," I said, trying to match her enthusiasm. "You know how Mom loves having everyone together." She really does. And honestly, I've been looking forward to this all week. It feels like we never get to really talk anymore, just the family. There was something in the way she said, "really talk," that made my stomach clench slightly. But before I could analyze it too much, Jake appeared at her elbow, looking slightly harried in that way parents of toddlers always do. "Hey Marina, good to see you." Jake gave me a quick hug, then immediately turned his attention to tracking Ethan, who was now wiggling to get down from Mom's arms. "Ethan, buddy, remember what we talked about in the car? We use our inside voice at Grandma and Grandpa's house." "It's fine, Jake," Mom said, setting Ethan down on his feet. "Let him run around. That's what grandparents' houses are for." As if summoned by the commotion, Dad emerged from the living room with Lucas trailing behind him. Robert Santos was one of those men who somehow looked exactly the same as he had when I was a kid. Same receding hairline, same slight paunch around the middle, same tendency to wear polo shirts and khakis like it was his personal uniform. He was also one of those dads who lit up around his grandson in a way that was both touching and slightly amusing. "There's my boy," Dad said, immediately crouching down to Ethan's level. "Did you bring Grandpa a hug?" Ethan immediately ran over and wrapped his little arms around Dad's neck. "Grandpa, I learned a new song, want to hear it?" "Of course I do, but maybe after dinner?" "Okay, Grandma worked very hard to make us a special meal." We all migrated toward the dining room, which Mom had set with her good china, the cream-colored set with the tiny blue flowers that only came out for special occasions. She'd also put together a beautiful centerpiece with mini pumpkins, pine cones, and sprigs of rosemary from her garden. The whole room had that warm golden glow that comes from combining good lighting with genuine happiness. "This looks amazing, Mrs. Santos," Lucas said, and I could tell he genuinely meant it. Lucas had grown up in a much smaller family, just him, his parents, and his brother, so these big, extended family gatherings still felt a little magical to him. Oh, honey, you know you don't need to be so formal. Call me Patricia, Mom said, waving her hand dismissively. Now, everyone sit wherever you'd like. I'm just going to check on the roast. We spent the next few minutes in that pleasant chaos of people finding seats, getting Ethan settled in his booster chair, and catching up on the small details of each other's lives. Jake started telling Dad about some project he was working on at his engineering firm while Lucas and I helped Mom bring out the food. The pot roast looked incredible, perfectly browned and surrounded by carrots, potatoes, and onions that had been slow cooking all day. Mom, this smells amazing, Camila said, as we all finally settled around the table. I've been craving your pot roast for weeks. Well, you know you're always welcome to come over for dinner, Mom said, passing the serving spoons around the table. You don't need to wait for special occasions. We fell into the comfortable rhythm of a family meal, passing dishes, making sure everyone had enough, cutting up Ethan's food into toddler-sized pieces. The conversation flowed easily at first, covering safe topics like work, the weather, and Ethan's latest developments. He's been talking so much lately, Camilla said, watching Ethan methodically pick all the carrots out of his portion and pile them on the edge of his plate. Yesterday, he told me an entire story about a dinosaur who went to the grocery store. It went on for like 10 minutes. That's wonderful, Dad said. Kids that age their imaginations are just incredible. Marina used to tell us these elaborate stories when she was little. Remember the one about the magical library? Honey. Oh, the one where all the books came to life at night. Mom's face lit up with the memory. She must have told us that story 50 times. We could never get her to bed on time because she was always adding new chapters. I felt myself smiling at the memory. I'd forgotten about that. I was obsessed with the idea that books had secret lives when no one was watching. You were always such a creative child, Mom continued, and I could feel the conversation starting to shift in a direction I wasn't sure I wanted it to go. So imaginative, so nurturing. Even as a little girl, you were always taking care of your dolls, setting up elaborate tea parties for them. Marina would make an amazing mom, Camilla chimed in, and something in her tone made me look up sharply. She was smiling, but there was an intensity in her eyes that I couldn't quite interpret. She's always been so patient, so good with kids. Ethan absolutely adores her. Aunt Marina, Ethan said on cue, grinning at me with a face covered in mashed potatoes. Play monsters later. Of course, buddy, I said, trying to ignore the way the conversation was suddenly focused on me and my supposed maternal instincts. But you have to finish your dinner first. Marina has always been maternal, Mom said, nodding in agreement with Camilla. Even when she was young, she was the one taking care of everyone else, making sure everyone was happy and comfortable. I could feel Lucas's eyes on me, probably sensing my discomfort. This was exactly the kind of conversation I'd been dreading. The subtle but persistent focus on my potential as a mother, the gentle but insistent questioning about when Lucas and I might start a family. She really is amazing with children, Camilla continued, and now I was certain there was something deliberate about this line of conversation. I've always thought she'd be such a natural mom. Some people just have that instinct, you know. Dad nodded enthusiastically. Your mother and I were just talking about this the other day, about how ready you and Lucas seem, how settled and happy you are together. We are happy, I said, carefully trying to keep my voice light. We're really enjoying this phase of our lives. Of course, Mom said quickly. I didn't mean to imply that you should rush into anything. It's just that, well, you're both at such a good place in your lives. Lucas has that stable job, you're building your business. You have the house. And you're not getting any younger, Dad added with the kind of casual bluntness that only fathers can get away with. I mean, not that there's any rush, but biologically speaking. Dad, I said, feeling my cheeks flush with embarrassment. What I'm just saying, these are things to think about. Your mother and I want to be young enough to really enjoy our grandchildren. I glanced at Camilla, expecting her to jump in and redirect the conversation, maybe make a joke about how Dad was being his usual tactless self. Instead, she was watching me with this strange, calculating expression, like she was taking mental notes of my reactions. I think Marina and Lucas will know when the time is right for them, Lucas said diplomatically, reaching under the table to squeeze my hand. These things can't be rushed. Of course not, Camilla said, but her tone was different now, more measured. It's just that some people wait for the perfect moment, and the perfect moment never comes. Life has a way of getting more complicated as you get older, not less. That's true, Mom agreed. When your father and I decided to start a family, we just jumped in. We didn't have everything figured out, but we made it work. And look how well that turned out, Dad said, gesturing around the table with obvious pride. 2 beautiful daughters, a wonderful son-in-law, and the best grandson in the world. Ethan giggled at being called the best grandson, completely oblivious to the undercurrents of adult conversation swirling around him. He'd managed to get mashed potatoes in his hair somehow, and Jake was trying to clean him up with a napkin while he squirmed in his chair. I just think, Camilla said, her voice taking on that particular tone that meant she was about to say something she'd been thinking about for a while, that Marina would be such an incredible mother. She has all this love to give, all this nurturing energy. It seems like such a waste to not share that with a child. The word waste hit me like a physical blow. A waste. As if my life, my marriage, my happiness somehow didn't count unless I was actively reproducing. I don't think any life is a waste, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There are lots of ways to find fulfillment and meaning. Oh, I didn't mean it that way, Camilla said quickly, but her eyes never left my face. I just meant that you have so much to offer a child. It would be beautiful to see you as a mom. Marina will be a wonderful mother when she's ready, Lucas said firmly, and I could hear the protective edge in his voice. But that's entirely up to her and Marina to decide. Of course, Mom said, clearly sensing that the conversation had taken a turn toward uncomfortable territory. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. You know how excited we get about the possibility of more grandchildren. It's fine, I said, though it wasn't really fine. I felt exposed, like I was under a microscope being examined for signs of maternal readiness. I understand. But as I looked around the table, I couldn't shake the feeling that this conversation hadn't been spontaneous. The way Camilla had steered us toward this topic, the way she'd been watching my reaction so carefully, it felt planned, orchestrated. You know what? Jake said suddenly, clearly trying to lighten the mood. Maybe we should talk about something else. How about those Patriots, Dad? Did you catch the game earlier? Dad immediately perked up, grateful for the change of subject. Don't even get me started on that referee in the third quarter. The conversation shifted to football, and I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. But throughout the rest of dinner, I kept catching Camila watching me when she thought I wasn't looking. Not in a sisterly, concerned way, but with this strange intensity that made me increasingly uncomfortable. After dinner, while the men cleaned up the dishes and Mom put together plates of leftovers for everyone to take home, Camilla and I found ourselves alone in the living room while Ethan played with a set of wooden blocks on the floor. So, she said, settling onto the couch next to me with a glass of wine. How are things really going with you and Lucas? They're good, I said, immediately on guard. Really good. We're happy. That's wonderful. You guys seem so solid, so stable. It's actually kind of inspiring. Thanks, I said, though. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more coming. I hope you don't mind me asking, but are you guys thinking about kids at all? I mean, obviously, you don't have to answer that if you don't want to. I studied her face, trying to figure out what she was really asking. We've talked about it. It's something we might want in the future. That's so exciting. I mean, when you do decide to start trying, you should let me know. I have so many tips about pregnancy, about doctors, about all the things nobody tells you beforehand. Okay, I said slowly. I'll keep that in mind. And honestly, Marina, I just want you to know that you don't have to wait until everything is perfect. I know you're a planner. I know you like to have everything figured out beforehand, but sometimes life's biggest blessings come when you least expect them. There was something in her tone that made me look at her more closely. Something that sounded almost like pity, or maybe condescension, like she knew something I didn't. What do you mean? I asked. Oh, nothing specific. I just know how you are. You always want to be in control, to have every detail planned out. But pregnancy, parenthood, those things can't be completely controlled. Sometimes you have to just trust that everything will work out. I felt a flash of irritation. I think Lucas and I are capable of making our own decisions about when and how to start a family. Of course you are. I didn't mean to imply otherwise. Camila held up her hands in a gesture of surrender, but her smile looked forced. I'm just saying, as someone who's been through it, that waiting for the perfect moment might mean waiting forever. Block tower, Ethan announced proudly from the floor, having successfully stacked about 5 blocks on top of each other. Look, Mommy. Look, Aunt Marina. That's amazing, buddy, I said, grateful for the interruption. You're such a good builder. I'm going to make it taller, he declared carefully, placing another block on top of his tower. Just be careful it doesn't fall, Camila warned, but Ethan was already reaching for another block. We watched him play for a few more minutes, and I found myself thinking about the conversation we just had. There had been something off about it, something that didn't quite ring true. Camila had always been opinionated, but this felt different, more pointed, more personal. Camila, I said finally, is there something specific you wanted to talk to me about? You mentioned on the phone that you felt like we hadn't really talked in a while. She was quiet for a moment, swirling the wine in her glass. Not really. I guess I just miss hanging out with you. We used to be so close when we were younger. We're still close, I said, though. Even as I said it, I wasn't sure it was true. We talked regularly, saw each other at family gatherings, remembered each other's birthdays. But the kind of deep sisterly intimacy we'd shared as kids had gradually faded as we'd become adults, with our own lives and responsibilities. I know. It's just different now. You know, we're both so busy with our own lives. Sometimes I feel like I barely know what's really going on with you. What do you mean? I mean, I know the surface stuff. I know you're working on graphic design projects. I know you and Lucas are happy. But I don't know the deeper things. Like, are you happy with your life? Really, truly happy? Do you ever feel like something's missing? The question caught me off guard. It was more personal, more vulnerable than the kinds of conversations we usually had. I am happy, I said. Really happy. My life might not be exactly what I pictured when I was younger, but it's good. It's mine. But don't you ever wonder what it would be like to have a child? To have that kind of love, that kind of purpose? And there it was again, the assumption that my life lacked purpose without children. Camila, I have purpose. My work, my marriage, my relationships with people I care about. Those things matter. Of course they do. I'm not saying they don't. She paused, studying my face with that intense expression again. I guess I just see how natural you are with Ethan, how much joy he brings to everyone around him. And I can't help but think about what an amazing mother you'd be. Maybe someday I will be, but that's going to be my choice made on my timeline. Absolutely, I totally respect that. But even as she said it, something in her expression suggested that she didn't entirely agree. Just then, Ethan's block tower finally toppled over, sending blocks scattering across the living room floor. Instead of being upset, he burst into delighted giggles. Crash, he announced. All fall down. Time to clean up, buddy, Camila said, standing up from the couch. We should probably get you home soon for your bath. As she bent down to help Ethan gather up the blocks, I found myself studying her profile, trying to figure out what had just happened. The conversation had felt like an interrogation, disguised as sisterly concern, like she was fishing for information about something specific. But what and why Lucas appeared in the doorway, looking relaxed and happy after his conversation with the dad about football and work. How are my favorite ladies doing? He asked clearly, oblivious to the tension that had been building between Camila and me. Great, Camila said brightly, her whole demeanor shifting back to the cheerful, enthusiastic version of herself. Just having some sister talk. Marina was telling me how happy you guys are. Lucas smiled and came over to sit on the arm of the couch next to me, his hand naturally finding my shoulder. We really are. Life is good. That's so wonderful to hear, Camila said, and for the first time all evening her smile looked genuinely warm. You guys deserve all the happiness in the world. But as we gathered our things and said our goodbyes, as Mom pressed containers of leftovers into our hands, and Dad complained good-naturedly about having to share his pot roast, I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. Something I didn't fully understand. During the drive home, Lucas and I rehashed the dinner, laughing about Dad's football commentary and Ethan's adorable block tower demonstration. But underneath the pleasant conversation, my mind was churning. What was Camilla's angle? Because despite her protestations about just wanting to reconnect, I was certain she had one. The questions about kids, the comments about my maternal instincts, the way she'd been watching me so carefully, none of it felt casual or spontaneous. It felt like the opening moves in some kind of game I didn't know I was playing, and that scared me more than I was ready to admit. The weeks between that October dinner and Christmas flew by in a blur of work deadlines, holiday shopping, and the usual seasonal chaos. But if I'm being honest, that conversation with Camilla stayed with me. Not in an obvious way. I didn't spend every day analyzing it or bringing it up to Lucas. It was more like a low-level hum in the background of my thoughts, a nagging sense that something had shifted in my family dynamic that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Lucas and I threw ourselves into the holidays with our usual enthusiasm. We spent a weekend in early December driving around New England looking at Christmas lights, stopping at little holiday markets to buy ornaments and drink hot cider. Our house became a cozy winter wonderland, twinkling lights strung around every window, a small but perfectly decorated tree in the corner of our living room, and the smell of cinnamon and pine candles filling every room. We'd started a tradition of hosting our own little Christmas Eve gathering for Lucas's family, and this year was no exception. His parents, his brother Mike, and his girlfriend Sarah and us, just enough people to make it feel festive without being overwhelming. Lucas's mom brought her famous Christmas cookies, his dad brought stories from his 40 years as a high school history teacher, and we all settled in for an evening of good food. Terrible Christmas movies, and the kind of comfortable family togetherness that I'd come to treasure. But underneath all the holiday joy, I found myself dreading Christmas Day at my parents' house. Not because I didn't want to see my family, I did, but because I couldn't shake the feeling that Camilla was planning something. The way she'd been texting me more frequently over the past few weeks, always with some excuse to check in. How are you feeling? Are you eating enough? Are you taking care of yourself? Questions that seemed innocent enough on the surface, but felt loaded with subtext I couldn't decode. Christmas morning dawned gray and cold with the kind of overcast sky that promised snow later in the day. Lucas and I exchanged our gifts over coffee and homemade cinnamon rolls. I'd gotten him a new watch he'd been eyeing for months, and he'd surprised me with a beautiful antique writing desk he'd found at an estate sale. It was perfect for my home office with all these little compartments and drawers for organizing my design supplies. I love it, I said, running my hands over the smooth wood surface. How did you even know I wanted something like this? Because I pay attention, he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind as I sat at the desk. You're always complaining about not having enough storage space for your art supplies. Plus, I thought it might inspire you to start that novel you're always talking about writing someday. Someday, I said, leaning back against his chest. Maybe next year will be the year I finally get serious about it. No pressure, but if you decide you want to try, you'll have the perfect place to do it. We took our time getting ready for my parents' house, both of us reluctant to leave our cozy Christmas morning bubble. But eventually, we loaded up the car with the gifts we'd bought for everyone and made the familiar drive across town. My parents' house looked like something out of a Christmas card. Mom had outdone herself this year with the decorations, white lights twinkling in every window, a gorgeous wreath on the front door, and what looked like a professional-grade light display, synchronized to music playing from speakers hidden in the bushes. Dad had clearly been recruited to help with the technical aspects because I could see his handiwork in the perfectly arranged extension cords and timers. Wow, Lucas said as we pulled into the driveway. Your parents really went all out this year. Mom's been planning this since October, I said, grabbing the bag of gifts from the back seat. She sent me at least 20 photos of different light displays she found on Pinterest. We could hear laughter and music coming from inside the house before we even reached the front door. Through the living room window, I could see the warm glow of the fireplace and the massive Christmas tree that Dad probably spent 3 hours positioning in the exact right spot. It looked like a scene from a holiday movie, all cozy and perfect and exactly the kind of Christmas gathering that people dream about. Mom answered the door before we could even knock, already wearing her festive red sweater and the reindeer earrings that came out every December. Merry Christmas, you two. Come in, come in. Everyone else is already here. We followed her into the living room where the rest of the family had already gathered. Dad was sitting in his usual chair by the fireplace wearing the Christmas tie that Mom probably had to threaten him to put on. Camila was on the couch with Ethan snuggled against her side, both of them still in their Christmas pajamas. Jake was sitting on the floor near the tree, already organizing the gift pile with the kind of methodical precision that made him such a good engineer. Marina Lucas. Ethan jumped up from the couch and ran over to us, his little face glowing with Christmas morning excitement. Santa came. He brought me trucks and books and everything. That's amazing, buddy, I said, crouching down to give him a proper hug. Did you leave cookies for Santa like we talked about? Yes. And carrots for the reindeer. Daddy said they probably ate everything because there were no crumbs left. That definitely means they liked what you picked out for them. Camila smiled at the exchange, but I noticed she was watching me with that same intense attention I'd picked up on back in October. Like she was studying my interactions with Ethan, cataloging my responses for some future reference. Merry Christmases, she said, standing up to give me a hug. You look great. Very glowy. Glowy. I laughed, trying to ignore the way the comment made me feel self-conscious. I think that's just the Christmas lights reflecting off my face. Maybe, she said, but her smile suggested she thought otherwise. We settled into the comfortable chaos of Christmas morning with a big family. Present opening was always a production in our house. Mom insisted on going one at a time so everyone could properly appreciate each gift. Dad documented everything with his camera, and Ethan provided running commentary on each unwrapping. I'd gotten Mom a beautiful silk scarf I'd found at a boutique downtown, and Dad a book about the history of baseball that I knew he'd love. For Camila and Jake, I'd chosen a nice bottle of wine and a gift card to their favorite restaurant. For Ethan, I'd gone a little overboard with a set of wooden trains that could connect to the track system he'd been building all year. Aunt Marina, these are perfect, Ethan said, immediately, tearing open the box and examining each train car with the serious attention that only a 3-year-old can bring to something truly important. Look, this one has a crane and this one carries cars. I thought you might like them, I said, feeling that warm glow that comes from nailing a gift for someone you love. These are wonderful, Marina, Camila said, but there was something odd in her tone. You really understand what kids like. You have such good instincts about these things. There it was again, that pointed reference to my supposed maternal instincts. I was starting to feel like every interaction with my family was being filtered through this lens of my potential as a mother. It's not that hard to shop for a 3-year-old, I said lightly. They're pretty easy to please. Still not. Everyone has that natural sense of what will make a child happy. It's a gift. Lucas received his gifts graciously. A sweater from Mom, a tool set from Dad, and a book about cybersecurity from Camila and Jake that actually looked pretty interesting. He seemed completely oblivious to the undercurrents I was picking up on, which I envied. Sometimes I wished I could just take things at face value the way he did. When it came time for Camila and Jake to distribute their gifts, I noticed Camila kept glancing at a large box sitting slightly apart from the others under the tree. It was wrapped in silver paper with an elaborate bow, and it was clearly meant for Lucas and me based on the size and placement. Okay, Camila said, standing up with obvious excitement. I have something special for Marina and Lucas. I've been planning this for months, and I really hope you guys like it. She retrieved the large box and set it down in front of us on the coffee table. It was heavier than I'd expected, and the wrapping was so perfect it looked like it had been done professionally. You didn't need to get us anything this elaborate, I said, already feeling slightly uncomfortable with the attention. We weren't expecting anything this big. Just open it, she said, practically bouncing with anticipation. I really think you're going to love it. Lucas started carefully peeling back the tape, but Camilla was too excited to wait for his methodical approach. Oh, just tear it open. I can't stand the suspense. He laughed and ripped off the paper more enthusiastically, revealing a plain cardboard box underneath. When he opened that, we found layers of protective foam padding surrounding what looked like some kind of electronic device. What is it? I asked, though I was already getting a sinking feeling in my stomach. Camilla couldn't contain herself any longer. It's a smart crib camera, top of the line with all the latest features. High-definition video, night vision, two-way audio, temperature monitoring, breathing sensors. Everything new parents could possibly want. The silence that followed her announcement was deafening. I stared at the device, trying to process what had just happened. A crib camera, for the baby Lucas and I weren't even actively trying to have. It's beautiful, Mom said, finally, clearly trying to fill the awkward silence. What a thoughtful gift. Very high-tech, Dad added, leaning forward to examine the box. I bet this thing cost a fortune. It wasn't cheap, Camilla admitted, but I wanted to get you guys something really special. Something you could use when the time comes. Lucas was still holding the box, looking as bewildered as I felt. Camilla, this is incredibly generous, but we're not exactly at the point where we need a crib camera. Well, not right now, obviously, but when you are ready to start trying, you'll have everything you need. I thought it would be nice for you to have one less thing to worry about when that time comes. That's very thoughtful. I managed, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. But this seems like something we should pick out ourselves when we're actually ready for it. Oh, you can always exchange it if you want a different model, Camilla said quickly. But I did a ton of research, and this one has the best reviews. The app connects to your phone so you can monitor everything remotely, and it has all these smart features that can track feeding schedules and sleep patterns. Remote monitoring, Lucas asked, and I could hear the cybersecurity professional in him perking up with interest. How does that work exactly? The camera connects to your Wi-Fi, and then you can access the feed from anywhere using your phone. You can even set up alerts for specific events. If the baby cries, if the temperature changes, if there's any movement in the room. Lucas paused clearly, trying to find a diplomatic way to express his concerns. That's a lot of connectivity for something in a nursery. What kind of security protocols does it use? Camilla waved her hand dismissively. Oh, I'm sure it's fine. The company has been around for years, and the reviews all say it's very secure. I could see Lucas trying not to grimace. In his line of work, I'm sure it's fine was never an acceptable answer when it came to internet-connected devices, especially ones that would be monitoring something as private as a nursery. This is really generous, Camilla, I said, trying to find a way to gracefully navigate the situation. But maybe we should wait to set up baby equipment until we're actually expecting. But that's the beauty of having it early, she insisted. You can set it up in advance, make sure everything is working properly. Get familiar with all the features. That way, when the time comes, you won't have to worry about the technical stuff. You'll already be all set up. Set up? Where? I asked. We don't have a nursery. Well, you could set it up in your spare room for now, just to test it out, make sure you understand how it works. The conversation was getting increasingly surreal. Here was my sister insisting that Lucas and I immediately install monitoring equipment for a baby that didn't exist in a nursery. We hadn't created for a pregnancy we weren't actively pursuing. Honey, Mom said gently. Clearly sensing the growing tension, maybe Marina and Lucas would prefer to wait on setting up baby equipment until they're ready. I just think it's smart to be prepared, Camilla said, and there was an edge to her voice now. I know Marina likes to plan everything in advance. I thought she'd appreciate having this ready to go. I do like to plan, I said carefully, but I also like to plan on my own timeline. Of course, I'm not trying to pressure you into anything. I just want you to have the best possible experience when you do decide to start a family. That's very sweet, Lucas said, but we haven't even started trying yet. This feels a little premature. I know it might seem that way, but trust me, once you start thinking seriously about having kids, time moves really fast. Before you know it, you're pregnant and trying to figure out everything at once. This way, you have one less thing to worry about. There was something in the way she kept pushing that made me increasingly uncomfortable. It felt less like generous gift giving and more like she was trying to insert herself into decisions that Lucas and I hadn't even made yet. Camila, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I appreciate the thought, but this feels like a lot of pressure. We're not ready for baby equipment. It's not pressure, she protested. It's just being prepared. And honestly, Marina, I'm a little surprised you're not more excited about this. I thought you'd be thrilled to have such advanced technology for when you do have kids. I might be thrilled about it someday, I said, but that someday isn't today. But you are planning to have kids eventually, right? The question came out with surprising intensity, like her entire gift depended on my answer. I felt Lucas stiffen beside me, and I could sense my parents watching this exchange with growing discomfort. Even Ethan seemed to pick up on the tension, looking back and forth between his mother and me with confused eyes. We've talked about it, I said finally, but we haven't made any definitive plans. But you want kids, though, right? The question hung in the air like a challenge. I could feel everyone waiting for my answer, as if my response would somehow determine the success or failure of the entire Christmas gathering. I think that's between Lucas and me, I said quietly. Of course it is. I didn't mean to pry, I guess I assumed based on how you are with Ethan that you'd want children of your own. Wanting kids someday and being ready to set up nursery equipment are two very different things. You're absolutely right, Mom interjected, clearly trying to defuse the situation. Camilla, sweetie, maybe Marina and Lucas can take the camera home and decide what they want to do with it later. Of course, Camilla said, but I could tell she was disappointed. I just want you to promise me you'll actually consider using it. Don't just stick it in a closet and forget about it. Why is it so important to you that we use it? Lucas asked, and I was grateful that he was finally pushing back on the weirdness of this whole situation. Because I spent a lot of time researching the best options, and I want to know that my gift is actually helpful to you guys. I don't want it to be one of those presents that just collects dust. We appreciate the research, I said, but we need to make our own decisions about when and how to prepare for a family. I know that. I'm not trying to make decisions for you. I'm just trying to be supportive. Support would be respecting our timeline instead of trying to accelerate it. The words came out sharper than I'd intended, and I immediately saw Camilla's face change. The excited, almost manic energy that had been driving her all morning suddenly shifted to something that looked almost like hurt. I wasn't trying to accelerate anything, she said quietly. I was just trying to be a good sister. And there it was, the guilt. The implication that by not embracing her gift with appropriate enthusiasm, I was somehow rejecting her sisterly love and support. You are a good sister, I said, trying to soften my tone. But good sisters also respect boundaries. I thought I was respecting your boundaries. I thought I was being helpful. Helpful would be asking what we need instead of assuming you know what's best for us. The room had gone completely quiet, except for the sound of Ethan playing with his new trains in the corner, apparently oblivious to the fact that the adults were having what amounted to a very polite argument. Maybe we should table this discussion, Dad suggested gently. It's Christmas morning. Let's not let gift-giving turn into a family conflict. There's no conflict, Camilla said quickly. I just want Marina to know that I support her, and I want her to feel like she has everything she needs when the time comes. I know you support me, I said, though I was starting to question whether that was really what this was about. But I need you to support me by trusting my judgment about my own life. I do trust your judgment. I just worry that you overthink things sometimes, that you wait for everything to be perfect instead of just letting life happen. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be prepared and intentional about major life decisions. No, of course not. But sometimes being too prepared can be its own kind of problem. I had no idea what that was supposed to mean. But before I could ask, Lucas stood up and carefully placed the camera box on the coffee table. This is a very generous gift, Camila, and we really appreciate the thought behind it. Marina and I will definitely discuss it and figure out what makes the most sense for us. It was a diplomatic response that managed to acknowledge the gift without committing us to anything, and I was grateful for his intervention. But I could see from Camilla's expression that she wasn't satisfied with his non-answer. "Just promise me you won't dismiss it out of hand," she said. "Promise me you'll actually consider using it." "We promise to consider it," Lucas said, though I could hear the slight edge of exasperation creeping into his voice. "Good. That's all I wanted." But as we moved on to the rest of the gift opening, I couldn't shake the feeling that the camera wasn't really a gift at all. It felt more like a statement of expectation, a physical manifestation of all the pressure I'd been feeling about starting a family. And the more I thought about it, the more uncomfortable the whole thing made me. After we finished with gifts and helped clean up the wrapping paper, I found myself in the kitchen, helping Mom prepare Christmas dinner while the men watched football and Camilla supervised Ethan's play session with his new toys. "I hope you weren't too upset about Camilla's gift," Mom said quietly as she basted the turkey. "I think she really meant well." "I know she meant well," I said, peeling potatoes with perhaps more force than necessary. "But it felt like a lot of pressure. She's just excited about the idea of you having children. We all are. I understand that, but excitement shouldn't translate into trying to manage my reproductive timeline." Mom paused in her basting and looked at me with the kind of serious expression that meant she was about to say something important. "Marina, honey, is everything okay with you and Lucas? I mean, in terms of family planning?" I set down the potato peeler and turned to face her. "What do you mean?" "I just mean you've been married for 3 years now, and I know you're both settled and happy. It's natural for family to start wondering about the next steps." "The next steps are whatever Lucas and I decide they are on our own timeline." "Of course, sweetheart. I'm not trying to pressure you. I'm just wondering if there's something we should know. Some reason why you're being so resistant to the idea." "Resistant to what idea? The idea of having kids eventually, or the idea of setting up baby equipment before I'm even pregnant?" "I suppose I'm asking if you're having trouble. With trying." The question hit me like a physical blow. "Mom, we're not even trying yet." "Oh," she said, and I could see the confusion on her face. "I guess I assumed, you've been married for 3 years. Being married doesn't mean we have to immediately start reproducing." "No, of course not. I just thought, well, most couples start thinking seriously about children by this point. We have thought about it, we've talked about it, but we haven't decided we're ready to start trying. Is it a financial concern because your father and I could help if..." "It's not about money, Mom. It's about timing and readiness and a dozen other factors that Lucas and I need to work through together." "I understand that. I just want you to know that you have our support, whatever you decide. Then support our decision to wait until we're ready." "Of course," she said, but I could tell she was still confused by our timeline. In her generation, 3 years of marriage without children was apparently cause for concern and intervention. We worked in silence for a few more minutes, but I could feel the weight of unspoken questions and expectations hanging in the air between us. It was the same feeling I'd had during that October dinner conversation with Camila, the sense that my family was collectively holding their breath, waiting for me to announce a pregnancy that wasn't coming. But why was everyone so invested in my reproductive schedule, and why did it feel like they knew something I didn't? During dinner, the conversation stayed safely focused on neutral topics: work holiday plans, Ethan's latest developmental milestones. But I kept catching Camila watching me, especially when I declined the wine Dad offered, or when I mentioned feeling tired. It was like she was looking for signs of something, But signs of what after dinner, while we were having coffee and leftover Christmas cookies, Camilla brought up the camera again. I hope you guys will really think about setting it up, she said to Lucas. Even just to test it out and get familiar with the features. We'll definitely consider it, Lucas said diplomatically. Because the sooner you get it connected, the sooner you can start playing around with all the monitoring features. The app is really sophisticated. You can track all kinds of data and patterns. What kind of data? Lucas asked, and I could hear his professional curiosity, overriding his personal discomfort with the situation. Sleep patterns, feeding schedules, room temperature, humidity levels. It even has AI features that can learn your baby's specific needs and send you customized recommendations. That's a lot of data collection for a baby monitor, Lucas said carefully. It's the future of parenting. Everything is getting smarter and more connected. This way you have access to all the information you need to make sure your baby is healthy and thriving. And where does all that data go? Lucas asked. What do you mean? I mean, is it stored locally on the device, or does it get uploaded to a cloud server somewhere? Who has access to it? Camilla looked slightly annoyed by the question. I don't know all the technical details. It's all explained in the user manual. The important thing is that it gives you complete peace of mind about your baby's safety and health. Complete peace of mind usually requires understanding how your data is being handled, Lucas said. You're overthinking it. Thousands of parents use these devices every day without any problems. I'm not overthinking it. I'm asking basic questions about privacy and security that every parent should ask before installing internet-connected devices in their home. I could see this conversation heading toward an argument about cybersecurity that neither Camilla nor Lucas really wanted to have on Christmas Day. Let's just agree that we'll read all the documentation before making any decisions, I said quickly. There's no rush to set anything up right now. But you will set it up eventually, right? Camilla pressed. I mean, when you do start trying to have kids. Camilla, I said, feeling my patience finally wearing thin. I need you to stop pushing this. We'll make our own decisions about what equipment we want in our future nursery, if and when we have a future nursery. I'm not pushing, I'm just asking. You've asked the same question 5 different ways in the past 2 hours. That's pushing. I just want to make sure my gift doesn't go to waste. Your gift won't go to waste if we decide it's not right for us. Gifts don't come with obligations to use them in specific ways. I know that. I just thought you'd be more excited about it. I might be excited about it when I'm actually preparing for a baby. Right now, it just feels like pressure. Everything feels like pressure to you lately, Camilla said, and there was definitely an edge to her voice now. I compliment your maternal instincts and you act like I'm attacking you. I give you a thoughtful gift and you treat it like some kind of burden. I'm not treating it like a burden. I'm treating it like what it is. A piece of equipment we don't currently need for a life event we haven't planned yet. But you are planning it right. I mean, you're not going to wait forever to have kids. And there it was, the question that seemed to be driving all of this. Not whether we wanted the camera, but whether we were planning to have children at all. Our family planning is between Lucas and me, I said firmly. It's not a family democracy. I'm not trying to make it a democracy. I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from. As your sister, I want to know what's going on in your life. What's going on in my life is that I'm happily married to a wonderful man. I have a career I love, and I'm living exactly the life I want to be living right now. But surely that life includes children at some point. Why surely us? I asked. Why is that a given? The question seemed to catch her off guard. Because you're so good with kids, because you'd be such an amazing mother, because that's what people do when they get married and settle down. Some people do that. Other people make different choices. But not you. You're not seriously considering not having children, are you? The way she asked the question made it clear that she found the possibility genuinely distressing. Like the idea that I might choose not to have children was somehow personally offensive to her. I'm considering all of my options and making decisions based on what's right for Lucas and me. But Marina, you can't seriously be thinking about not having kids. You'd regret it for the rest of your life. You don't know what I'd regret. I know you. I know how much you love Ethan, how natural you are with children. I know you'd be an incredible mother. Being good with kids doesn't mean I have to become a parent, but it does mean you should seriously consider it. Marina, some women aren't meant to be mothers, but you're not one of them. You're meant for this. The conversation had taken a turn that made me deeply uncomfortable. Camila wasn't just pushing the camera anymore. She was pushing an entire life script that she'd apparently written for me without my input. I need you to stop, I said quietly. I need you to stop telling me what I'm meant for and what I should want and what decisions I should make about my own life. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just pointing out what seems obvious to everyone who knows you. What seems obvious to you is pressure to me. It's not pressure, Marina. It's love. It's family wanting the best for you. The best for me is what I decide is best for me. Sometimes we can't see what's best for us when we're too close to the situation. Are you seriously suggesting that you know better than I do what's right for my own life? I'm suggesting that sometimes other people can see things more clearly than we can ourselves. I felt Lucas's hand find mine under the table, a quiet show of support that reminded me I wasn't navigating this conversation alone. Camila, Lucas said quietly, I think we need to table this discussion. It's getting pretty heated and it's Christmas. I'm not trying to make it heated, Camila said. I'm just trying to understand why Marina is being so defensive about something that should be exciting and joyful. I'm being defensive because I feel like I'm being interrogated about personal decisions that aren't up for family debate. They're not up for debate, but they do affect the whole family, especially mom and dad who are hoping for more grandchildren. My reproductive choices are not about mom and dad's hopes for grandchildren. But they're not just about you either. When you're part of a family, your decisions impact everyone. I stared at her, trying to process what she'd just said. The idea that my decision about whether or not to have children was somehow a family decision was so fundamentally wrong that I didn't even know where to start responding. Yes, they are just about me, I said finally. And Lucas, they're about us and no one else. I just think you should consider all the people who love you and want to see you happy. I am happy. Right now, with my life exactly as it is, I'm happy. But wouldn't you be happier with a child with a family of your own? I have a family of my own. Lucas is my family. You know what I mean? A real family with children. The words hung in the air like a slap. A real family. As if my marriage, my life, my happiness somehow didn't count as real, without children to validate it. I think this conversation is over, I said, standing up from the table. Lucas, are you ready to go home? Marina? Wait, Camila said quickly. I didn't mean it that way. I just meant, I know exactly what you meant, I said, and I think we've said enough for one day. As we gathered our things and said our goodbyes, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in my relationship with my family. The camera sat in its box on the coffee table, a physical reminder of all the expectations and assumptions I was apparently failing to meet. During the drive home, Lucas and I barely spoke. The weight of the afternoon's conversation sat between us like a third passenger, and I could tell he was processing everything that had happened just as much as I was. That was intense, he said finally as we pulled into our driveway. That was awful, I corrected. I feel like I just spent 4 hours being cross-examined about my life choices. Your sister really wants you to have kids. My sister wants a lot of things that aren't her decision to make. We carried the camera box inside and set it down in our hallway where it seemed to loom larger than its actual size warranted. What do you want to do with it? Lucas asked. I stared at the box, thinking about all the pressure and expectations it represented. I don't know. Put it in the closet and forget about it. We could return it. To who I don't even know where she bought it. We could figure it out. Maybe. Or maybe we just leave it alone for now and deal with it later. That works too. But as we settled in for a quiet evening at home, I found myself thinking about Camilla's insistence that we set up the camera even though we didn't have a baby. Her repeated questions about whether we'd promised to use it, the way she'd pushed for us to connect it to our Wi-Fi and test out all the monitoring features. Why was it so important to her that we install a device we didn't need? And why did I have the growing suspicion that her interest in our future family planning was about more than just sisterly concern? The days after Christmas passed in a weird haze of normalcy that felt anything but normal. Lucas went back to work. I dove into a new design project for a local bakery, and we both pretended that the camera box sitting in our hallway closet didn't exist. But I couldn't stop thinking about that conversation with Camila, about the way she'd pushed and prodded and made assumptions about my life that felt so fundamentally wrong. I kept replaying her words in my head. A real family. The way she'd said it, like my marriage to Lucas was somehow incomplete or inadequate without children to legitimize it. Like our happiness, our partnership, our home together was just a placeholder until we got around to doing what we were really supposed to be doing. By New Year's Eve, I was exhausted from thinking about it. Lucas and I had decided to have a quiet celebration at home. Just the two of us, some good wine, and whatever terrible movie we could find on Netflix. We were curled up on the couch around 10 p.m., sharing a bowl of popcorn and making fun of a rom-com that was so predictable we could guess every plot twist 3 scenes in advance. "Let me guess," Lucas said as the female lead had her inevitable misunderstanding with the male lead. "They're going to spend the next 20 minutes apart, realize they can't live without each other, and then have a dramatic reunion in the last 5 minutes. Don't forget the part where it starts snowing at the exact moment they kiss," I added, even though it's supposedly set in July. Movie snow doesn't follow the laws of physics or seasons. I laughed, feeling relaxed for the first time in days. This was what I loved about our life together. The easy conversation, the shared sense of humor, the way we could find entertainment in the simplest things. Why wasn't this enough? Why did everyone seem to think we needed to add complexity and chaos and sleepless nights to a life that was already pretty great? My phone buzzed with a notification, and I automatically reached for it without thinking. Social media had become such a mindless habit, the kind of thing you do when you're half watching a movie and need something to occupy your hands. I opened Instagram and started scrolling through the usual post-holiday content. Pictures of New Year's Eve parties, resolution posts about gym memberships and diet plans, and the endless stream of vacation photos from people who'd spent Christmas somewhere warm and sunny. That's when I saw it. Camila's latest post was a carousel of photos from Christmas Day. The first image showed our family gathered around my parents' Christmas tree, all of us smiling and looking festive and happy. It looked like any other family holiday photo, the kind of picture that would make anyone think we were the epitome of a close, loving family. But it was the caption that made my blood run cold. "Another beautiful Christmas with family. So grateful for these moments together, especially as we navigate some challenging times. I've been supporting my sister through her fertility struggles, and while it's been hard, I'm so proud of how strong she's been. Some journeys take longer than others, but I know she and Lucas will be amazing parents when the time is right. In the meantime, I'm doing everything I can to help and support them through this difficult time. Family is everything. Family, love, supporting, sister, fertility journey, novel, I hit community, so hopeful 2024. I stared at the screen, reading the words over and over again, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Fertility struggles, TTC community, trying to conceive community, supporting my sister through this difficult time. She was talking about me. She was posting about my supposed fertility struggles to her hundreds of followers, presenting herself as the supportive sister, helping me through my journey. Except none of it was true. Lucas and I weren't struggling with fertility. We weren't trying to conceive. We hadn't even decided we were ready to start trying. This entire narrative she'd constructed was complete fiction. "Holy shit," I whispered, my hands starting to shake. "What's wrong?" Lucas looked over from the TV, immediately picking up on the change in my energy. "Look at this." I handed him my phone, my voice barely above a whisper. "Look at what Camila posted about us." Lucas took the phone and read the caption, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief, to anger in the span of about 10 seconds. "What the hell?" he said. "Marina, what is this? Why is she posting about fertility struggles? We're not even trying to get pregnant." I know we're not. But apparently, she's decided we are. Lucas scrolled through the rest of the post, which included several more photos from Christmas Day. There was one of me holding Ethan with the caption, "Marina is such a natural with kids. She's going to be an incredible mom." Another showed the smart crib camera box with the caption, "Got them some essentials for when their miracle happens." I believe in the power of positive thinking and preparation. "This is insane," Lucas said, handing the phone back to me. "She's literally making up a story about our private life and posting it online for everyone to see." I clicked on the hashtag #community and was immediately overwhelmed by thousands of posts from women sharing their real struggles with fertility, their losses, their hope, their pain. Real people going through real challenges. And here was my sister, using their experiences as content for her own social media narrative. "Look at the comments," I said, scrolling down to see what people were saying. "Oh, Marina, sending you so much love and baby dust. Your sister is amazing for supporting you. You're such a good sister. Camila, Marina is lucky to have you in her corner. Fertility journeys are so hard. Praying for your sister's rainbow baby. I went through this for 3 years before I got my miracle. Tell Marina not to give up hope." There were dozens of comments from strangers offering me support for struggles. I wasn't having advice for a journey. I wasn't on hope for a situation that didn't exist. "I feel sick," I said, setting the phone down on the coffee table like it was contaminated. "I literally feel sick." "Marina, this is completely unacceptable. She can't just make up stories about our personal life and post them online." "But she did. She already did it." I could feel panic starting to build in my chest. "Us! Lucas, what if people we know see this? What if clients see this? What if your coworkers see this?" "If they do, we'll tell them the truth, that your sister is posting fiction. But the damage is already done. Everyone who sees this is going to think we're struggling with infertility. They're going to look at me with those pitying eyes and ask me how I'm holding up and offer me advice about treatments and supplements and doctors." Lucas moved closer to me on the couch, putting his arm around my shoulders. "Hey, breathe. We'll figure this out." How do we figure this out? Do I comment on her post and correct her? Do I call her and scream at her? Do I just pretend this never happened? First, let's look at the rest of her account. Maybe this was just a one-time thing." But even as he said it, I could tell from his expression that he didn't believe it would be that simple. I picked up my phone again and started scrolling through Camila's recent posts. What I found made the panic in my chest turn into something much darker and more frightening. For the past 3 months since that October dinner, Camila had been documenting my supposed fertility journey. There were subtle posts about praying for family members going through difficult times and supporting loved ones through challenging seasons. There were inspirational quotes about perseverance and faith and the strength it takes to keep trying when things don't go according to plan. In November, she'd posted a photo of herself at what looked like a fertility clinic waiting room with the caption, "Sometimes being a supportive sister means going to appointments when the person you love is too overwhelmed to go alone." In December, she'd shared an article about the emotional toll of infertility with the caption, "Educating myself so I can better support my sister through this journey. Knowledge is power, and love is everything." 3 days before Christmas, she'd posted about choosing hope over fear and believing in miracles with a photo of baby shoes she'd supposedly bought for when the time is right. It was an entire narrative carefully constructed over months, presenting her as the devoted sister, supporting me through a fertility struggle that existed only in her imagination. Oh my God, Lucas. This isn't just one post. She's been doing this for months. She's been building this whole story about my life, and none of it is real. Lucas read over my shoulder as I scrolled through the posts, his jaw getting tighter with each one. "This is beyond inappropriate," he said. "This is like identity theft or something. She's literally stealing your story and rewriting it for her own purposes. But why? Why would she do this? What does she get out of pretending I'm struggling with fertility? I don't know, but we need to find out, and we need to make her stop. I kept scrolling looking for any clue about what might be motivating this bizarre fiction. That's when I noticed something else. The engagement on these posts was significantly higher than her usual content. The fertility-related posts had hundreds of likes, dozens of comment shares from people spreading awareness about infertility. Look at this, I said, showing Lucas the like counts. Her regular posts about Ethan or her daily life get maybe 20 or 30 likes, but these posts about my supposed fertility struggles are getting hundreds. So, she's using your fake medical issues for social media engagement. It looks like it. And look at some of these comments. People are asking her about resources, about support groups, about her own experience with infertility. She's positioning herself as some kind of expert or advocate. Lucas ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as his way of processing information that made him angry. Marina, this is seriously messed up. She's not just lying about your life. She's exploiting other people's real pain for attention. I clicked on one of the hashtags she'd used, fertility advocate, and found myself looking at her profile from a completely different angle. Mixed in with her regular mom content, she'd been building a secondary brand around fertility awareness and support. She was positioning herself as someone who understood the struggle, who could offer advice and hope to other women going through similar challenges. Except she'd never gone through it herself. She'd gotten pregnant with Ethan easily, had an uncomplicated pregnancy, and had never mentioned having any fertility issues. Her expertise was entirely manufactured based on her fictional account of my fictional struggles. This is so much worse than I thought, I said, my voice starting to shake. She's not just lying about me. She's using those lies to build some kind of online presence as a fertility advocate. She's taking advantage of women who are actually struggling. We have to confront her about this. And say what, "Hey Camila, I saw your posts about my fake fertility problems, and I'd like you to stop making up stories about my reproductive system." Yeah, actually, that's exactly what we're going to say. Before I could stop him, Lucas was reaching for his phone. I'm calling her right now. Wait, don't. It's New Year's Eve, it's late, and I need time to think about how to handle this. Marina, she's been lying about your personal medical information on social media for months. This isn't something that can wait for a convenient time. I know, but calling her while I'm this angry isn't going to solve anything. It's just going to turn into a screaming match. Lucas looked like he wanted to argue, but he set his phone down. Fine, but we're dealing with this tomorrow. First thing. I nodded, but I was already dreading that conversation, because now I understood what had been bothering me about Camila's behavior over the past few months. The pointed questions about kids, the comments about my maternal instincts, the pressure to set up the crib camera. It wasn't just sisterly concern. It was content creation. She needed me to fit the narrative she'd been building online. The loving sister supporting her fertility challenged sibling, the hopeful aunt preparing for the eventual miracle baby, the family rallying around one of their own during a difficult time. And when I didn't cooperate with that narrative, when I insisted that Lucas and I were happy with our current life and weren't actively trying to get pregnant, she just kept building the story without me. I thought about the camera box sitting in our closet, and suddenly Camila's insistence that we set it up made perfect sense. She needed proof that we were preparing for a baby. She needed content that would support her story about our supposed fertility journey. The camera, I said suddenly. What about it? That's why she was so insistent that we set it up right away. Not because she thought we needed it, but because she needed us to have it. For her story. Lucas frowned. What do you mean? Think about it. She gives us a crib camera for Christmas, posts about it online as preparation for their miracle baby. If we actually set it up, she can post about us taking that next step, being hopeful, getting ready. It becomes part of the narrative she's building. And if you announce a pregnancy at some point, she gets to take credit for being the supportive sister who helped you through your struggles. Exactly. And if we don't, she can just keep posting about how we're still on our journey and how hard it is to watch us go through this. Oh, the more I thought about it, the more I realized how calculated this whole thing was. Camilla hadn't just been making assumptions about our family planning. She'd been actively constructing a fictional version of our lives that served her purposes. I picked up my phone and scrolled back to her Christmas post, reading it again, with this new understanding. Supporting my sister through her fertility struggles. Doing everything I can to help and support them through this difficult time. It all sounded so noble, so loving, so selfless. But it was built on lies. I need to see something, I said, opening a new browser tab on my phone. What are you looking for? I want to see if she's just posting about this or if she's doing more with it. I searched for Camila's name, along with terms like fertility advocate and infertility support. What I found made my stomach drop even further. She had started a blog, Walking with Warriors, a sister's guide to supporting fertility struggles. The tagline read, "Join me as I share my journey of supporting my beloved sister through the ups and downs of trying to conceive." The blog had been active for 2 months with posts about the does and don'ts of supporting someone through infertility, and how to be hopeful when your loved one is losing faith, and gift ideas for families on their fertility journey. Each post was written from the perspective of a loving sister who was watching her family member go through the challenges of trying to conceive. They were full of insights about the emotional toll of fertility treatments, advice about what to say and what not to say, and inspirational messages about never giving up hope. They were also complete fiction. Lucas. I said, my voice barely a whisper. She started a blog about supporting me through fertility struggles. She's been writing detailed posts about my fake medical issues for 2 months. Lucas looked at the blog over my shoulder, his expression getting darker with each post title. Marina, this isn't just social media oversharing. This is stalker behavior. She's created an entire alternate reality about your life. I clicked on the About Me section of the blog and found a photo of Camila with a long bio about her journey as a fertility support advocate. It talked about how her sister's struggles had opened her eyes to the challenges faced by families dealing with infertility, and how she'd made it her mission to educate others and provide support and resources. At the bottom of the page was a Support This Blog button that linked to a PayPal account where people could donate to help her continue this important work. She's making money off of this, I said, my voice cracking. People are donating money to support her fake advocacy work that's based on my fake fertility problems. This is fraud, Lucas said flatly. She's literally committing fraud. I felt like I was in some kind of surreal nightmare. My sister had spent months building an online brand around supporting me through a medical condition. I didn't have writing detailed blog posts about my fictional struggles and accepting money from strangers who wanted to support her fake advocacy work. And the worst part was how believable it all was. The posts were well-written, emotionally resonant, and full of the kind of insights that could only come from someone who had really walked this journey. Except, she hadn't walked it. She'd just researched it enough to fake it convincingly. I clicked on the comments section of her most recent blog post and found dozens of women sharing their own fertility stories, thanking Camila for her support and advocacy, asking for advice about how to support their own family members. Real women with real struggles being manipulated by my sister's fictional narrative. I think I'm going to be sick, I said, setting the phone down and putting my head in my hands. Hey, Lucas said softly, rubbing my back. We're going to fix this. We're going to make her take it all down and tell the truth. How? How do we fix this even if she deletes everything? People have already seen it. They've already formed opinions about our life based on her lies. And what about all those women who think she's been supporting them? What happens when they find out it was all fake? We'll figure it out, one step at a time. I trusted her, I said, and I could hear my voice breaking. I knew something felt off about the way she'd been acting, but I never imagined she was capable of something like this. She's been lying about my medical information. She's been making money off of fake stories about my body, my marriage, my life. I know, and we're going to make sure she faces consequences for it. I thought about all those conversations over the past few months. The questions about kids, the comments about my maternal instincts, the pressure about the camera. Had any of it been genuine sisterly concern? Or had it all been about creating content for her fake advocacy brand? The camera, I said, suddenly standing up from the couch. I need to get rid of that camera right now. Marina, what are you doing? I'm hiding it. I'm putting it somewhere she can never find it, and I'm never setting it up. Ever. I went to the hallway closet and pulled out the camera box, carrying it upstairs to our bedroom. Lucas followed me, watching as I shoved the box into the back of our bedroom closet behind winter coats and storage bins. There, I said, slightly out of breath. She can write all the blog posts she wants about how we're preparing for our miracle, but she's not getting any photos or proof that we actually set up her surveillance equipment. Surveillance equipment? That's what it is, isn't it? She gives us a camera that connects to Wi-Fi, insists we set it up and test it out, and then she has access to monitor our house remotely. She can track our comings and goings, listen to our conversations, gather information for her fake blog posts. Lucas was quiet for a moment, and I could see him processing this possibility from his cybersecurity perspective. The two-way audio feature, he said slowly, and the smartphone connectivity. If she had access to the camera's feed, she could listen to our private conversations. She could watch us in our own home. She could gather real information to make her fake stories more believable. Marina, that's criminal. That's not just lying on social media. That's invasion of privacy, possibly illegal surveillance. I sat down on the edge of our bed, feeling overwhelmed by the scope of what we'd discovered. What kind of person does this? What kind of person lies about their sister's medical issues to build an online brand? What kind of person tries to install surveillance equipment in their family member's home? Someone who's lost all sense of boundaries. Someone who's more concerned with their online image than with the real people in their life. I picked up my phone again and scrolled back through Camila's recent posts with fresh eyes. Now I could see the pattern clearly, the way she'd been building anticipation for some kind of big announcement. Posts about exciting news coming soon, and prayers being answered, and miracles happening when you least expect them. She was setting up her followers to expect a pregnancy announcement. My pregnancy announcement. Look at this, I said, showing Lucas a post from 3 days ago. Big news coming next week. Sometimes the best gifts come when you're not expecting them. Keeping my sister and her husband in my thoughts and prayers during this special time. Sure, miracles in the making, blessed whole family first. She's basically telling people you're pregnant without actually saying it. So when I don't announce a pregnancy, she can either claim I had a miscarriage, which would generate even more sympathy and engagement, or she can just keep the hope alive indefinitely. Lucas shook his head in disgust. This is sociopathic behavior. Normal people don't construct elaborate fictional narratives about their family members' medical issues. I thought about all the women who had been commenting on Camila's posts and blog, sharing their own struggles, looking to her for support and guidance. How betrayed would they feel when they learned that her expertise was entirely fabricated? How much harm was she doing to people who were already vulnerable and struggling? We have to stop this, I said. Not just for us, but for all the people she's been manipulating. Agreed, but we need to be smart about how we handle it. If she's been doing this for months, she's not going to just admit she was wrong and quietly delete everything. What do you think she'll do when we confront her? I think she'll try to justify it. She'll say she was trying to be supportive, or that she was just sharing her perspective, or that she didn't mean any harm. And if that doesn't work, then she'll probably get defensive and try to turn it back on us somehow, make us the bad guys for not appreciating her support. I thought about the conversation we'd had at Christmas, the way Camila had gotten upset when I didn't seem grateful enough for her gift and her advice. If she was capable of creating this elaborate fictional narrative, what else might she be capable of when confronted? I'm scared, I admitted. I'm scared of what she might do if we try to make her stop. She's already shown that she's willing to lie and manipulate people. What if she escalates? Then we'll deal with it. But Marina, we can't let fear of her reaction stop us from addressing this. She's literally profiting off of lies about your medical condition. That's not something we can just ignore. He was right, of course. But as I sat there thinking about everything we'd discovered, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. That whatever confrontation we were about to have with Camila was going to reveal even more disturbing truths about what she'd been doing behind our backs. I looked at the camera box now safely hidden in the back of our closet and wondered what other gifts or support she'd offered that were really just tools for gathering information or creating content. Tomorrow, I said finally. We'll deal with this tomorrow. But tonight, I just want to forget about it and focus on the fact that in about an hour, it's going to be a new year. Maybe a year where my sister stops using my reproductive system as a source of online content. Lucas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Here's to a year of truth instead of fiction, and privacy instead of surveillance, and family members who act like actual family members instead of content creators. We went back downstairs to finish watching our terrible movie, but the mood was completely different now. The comfortable, peaceful evening we'd been enjoying had been replaced by anxiety and anger, and the sick feeling that comes from discovering that someone you trust has been betraying you in ways you never could have imagined. As midnight approached, I found myself thinking about all the New Year's resolutions people were probably making. Lose weight, exercise more, spend more time with family, be more grateful for what you have. My resolution was simpler. Figure out how to protect myself from a sister who had turned my private life into her public brand, and somehow find a way to rebuild trust in a family relationship that I was starting to realize had been built on lies for longer than I'd known. The countdown on TV reached 0 fireworks exploded across the screen, and Lucas kissed me as 2024 officially began. But all I could think about was the conversation we were going to have tomorrow, and the fact that after tonight, nothing with my family was ever going to be the same. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those blog posts, those comments from women pouring their hearts out to my sister about struggles they thought she understood. I kept thinking about the camera hidden in our closet, about all the ways Camila had been pushing us to set it up, about the surveillance capabilities Lucas had mentioned. By morning, I was exhausted and on edge. Lucas made coffee and tried to distract me with normal conversation about work and weekend plans, but I could tell his mind was spinning too. We were both waiting for a reasonable hour to call Camila, both dreading the confrontation we knew we had to have. I keep thinking about something, Lucas said around 9 a.m., setting down his coffee mug with a serious expression. About that camera and the way your sister was so insistent that we test it out right away. What about it? Well, from a cybersecurity perspective, there are a lot of red flags. The way she knew so much about the specific features, the way she kept pushing us to connect it to our Wi-Fi, the fact that she seemed to know more about the technical capabilities than someone who just bought it as a gift would normally know. You think she researched it specifically for surveillance purposes? I think we should find out exactly what that device is capable of before we confront her about anything. Because if my suspicions are right, the blog posts and social media lies might be just the tip of the iceberg. Lucas's professional paranoia was kicking in, and honestly, I was grateful for it. His job had taught him to always assume the worst-case scenario when it came to connected devices and privacy, and right now that perspective felt invaluable. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "I'm thinking we should set up that camera in a controlled environment and see what happens. See what it tries to connect to, what data it sends, what kind of access someone could have if they'd pre-configured it. But won't that give Camila exactly what she wants? Proof that we're setting up baby equipment? Not if we're smart about it. We set it up somewhere other than a nursery. We don't put any real personal information in range of the camera, and we monitor all the network traffic to see where it's going." The idea made me nervous, but I could see the logic in it. If Camila had given us surveillance equipment disguised as a baby monitor, we needed to know the extent of what she could see and hear. "Okay," I said. But how do we set up a fake nursery without her knowing it's fake? Lucas grinned, and for the first time since last night, he looked genuinely excited about something. Leave that to me, I have an idea. An hour later, we were standing in our spare bedroom, the room that everyone automatically assumed would eventually become a nursery, looking at the strangest setup I'd ever seen. Lucas had moved in an old wooden crib from his parents' basement, the one he and his brother had slept in as babies. It was beautiful in a vintage way, with intricate spindlework and a classic design that looked perfect for a traditional nursery. But instead of baby bedding, Lucas had arranged it with a single, white pillow and a small stuffed animal he'd grabbed from a box of childhood keepsakes. It looked just realistic enough to suggest that we were in the early stages of preparing for a baby, but not so detailed that it would be obvious if the camera was being monitored closely. "This is either brilliant or completely insane," I said, watching him position the camera on the dresser across from the crib. "Probably both. But if your sister is using this thing to spy on us, we need to know about it before we confront her." Lucas had also set up his laptop with network monitoring software that would track every piece of data the camera sent or received. He'd created a separate Wi-Fi network just for this test, isolated from our main internet connection, so he could see exactly what the device was trying to access. "Are you ready?" he asked, his finger hovering over the power button on the camera. "As ready as I'll ever be to potentially invite my sister's surveillance equipment into our home." He pressed the button, and immediately the camera came to life. A small LED light blinked green, and within seconds, Lucas's laptop started showing network activity. "It's connecting," he said, watching the data stream across his screen. "And it's not just connecting to the manufacturer's servers. It's trying to access multiple external networks." "Is that normal?" "Definitely not normal. Most baby monitors connect to 1 or 2 servers for basic functionality. This thing is reaching out to at least 6 different IP addresses." I watched over his shoulder as lines of code and network logs filled his screen. Most of it was meaningless to me, but Lucas's increasingly tense expression told me everything I needed to know. "Marina," he said quietly, "this camera just connected to a network called Camila Home and started uploading data." The words hit me like a physical blow. Her home network. How is that even possible? Someone pre-configured this device to automatically connect to her Wi-Fi network whenever it was in range. But that's not the worst part. "There's a worst part," Lucas pointed to a section of code on his screen. "Look at this. The camera is set up with keyword detection. It's programmed to send alerts to a specific phone number whenever it hears certain words." "What kind of words?" "Pregnant, doctor, fertility, baby, appointment, test, ultrasound, clinic." The list goes on. I felt the room start to spin slightly. "So, if we had set this up in our actual bedroom or living room?" "Every time you mentioned anything related to pregnancy or medical appointments, your sister would get an immediate alert with a recording of the conversation." I couldn't even finish the sentence. The scope of the surveillance was so much worse than I'd imagined. "It gets worse," Lucas said, his voice getting harder. "The camera also has facial recognition software. It's been programmed to identify you specifically and send additional alerts whenever you appear in the frame." "How could it identify me if we just set it up?" "Someone uploaded photos of you to train the recognition software. Recent photos based on the file timestamps." I sat down heavily on the edge of the crib, trying to process what Lucas was telling me. Camila hadn't just given us a baby monitor, she'd given us a sophisticated surveillance system that was specifically designed to spy on me. She'd programmed it with my photos, set up keyword alerts for anything related to fertility or pregnancy, and configured it to automatically send her information whenever I was in range. "She's been planning this for months," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The gift, the blog, the social media post, it was all part of some elaborate scheme to monitor my private life. "And probably to generate more content for her fake advocacy brand," Lucas added. "Think about it. If she had recordings of your actual conversations about fertility appointments or pregnancy symptoms, her blog post would be incredibly detailed and authentic. Using my real private moments to make her fake expertise more believable." "Exactly." I thought about all the times over the past few months when I'd felt like Camila knew things about my life that I hadn't told her. Small details about my mood, my health, my conversations with Lucas. I'd assumed she was just being observant or that my parents had mentioned things to her. But what if she'd been listening all along? What if she'd already been testing surveillance methods before giving us the camera? Lucas, I said, a new kind of panic creeping into my voice. What if this isn't the first device she's given us? What if she's already been listening somehow? Lucas was quiet for a moment, considering the possibility. Have you gotten any other gifts from her recently? Anything electronic or connected? I tried to think back over the past year. She gave me a smart speaker for my birthday, one of those voice-activated assistants. And last Christmas, she got us a streaming device for our TV. Where are those devices now? The speaker is in our kitchen. The streaming device is connected to our bedroom TV. Lucas was already moving toward the door. We need to check those devices right now. We spent the next hour going through every electronic device in our house that had come from Camila. Lucas used his laptop to scan for unusual network activity, checking to see what data each device was sending and where it was going. What we found was even more disturbing than the camera. The smart speaker in our kitchen had been modified to record and transmit conversations even when it wasn't supposed to be active. Lucas found logs showing that it had been sending audio files to external servers for the past 8 months. 8 months? I said, feeling sick. She's been listening to our private conversations in our own kitchen for 8 months. And look at this, Lucas said, pointing to his screen. The streaming device in our bedroom has been accessed remotely at least twice a week for the past year. Someone's been using it to monitor when we're home, when we're asleep, what we're watching. Our bedroom. I repeated, the full implications hitting me. She's been spying on our bedroom. The violation felt so complete, so overwhelming, that I couldn't even process it emotionally. My sister had been conducting surveillance on the most intimate spaces of my home, collecting information about my private life, my marriage, my daily routines. We need to document all of this, Lucas said, his cybersecurity training taking over. We need screenshots, network logs, evidence of what these devices have been programmed to do. While he worked on gathering digital evidence, I found myself walking through our house with new eyes, looking at every appliance, every device, every gift that had come from my family. How many other things were equipped with cameras, or microphones, or tracking capabilities? The coffee maker Camila had given us for our anniversary. Was it connected to Wi-Fi? The digital picture frame my parents had sent for our housewarming. Did it have a camera? The fitness tracker Jake had gotten me for Christmas last year. Was it sending my health data somewhere it shouldn't? I felt like I was living in a stranger's house, surrounded by devices that might be watching and listening and reporting back to my family. Marina, Lucas called from the spare bedroom where he was still analyzing data from the camera. You need to see this. I went back to find him staring at his laptop screen with an expression of complete disbelief. What now? The camera isn't just sending data to your sister, it's also uploading to a commercial server that's connected to at least 12 other cameras in different locations. What does that mean? I think it means your sister isn't just spying on you. She's part of some kind of network that's spying on multiple families. And I think she might be selling access to the surveillance footage. The room went completely quiet, except for the sound of my own breathing, which was getting faster and more shallow as the panic really started to set in. She's selling footage of people's private lives. It looks like it. There's a payment processing system connected to the server and logs showing regular transactions. Someone is making money off of this surveillance network. I sank down into the chair by the window, feeling like my entire world had shifted off its axis. This wasn't just about my sister lying on social media or even spying on my personal life. This was about organized surveillance commercial exploitation, possibly illegal activity involving multiple families and children. Lucas, there are other families, other people being spied on without their knowledge, and probably other children. The cameras are marketed as baby monitors, which means there could be footage of children being sold to strangers online. The ethical implications were staggering. Not only had my sister violated my privacy and exploited my fake medical condition for her online brand, but she was potentially involved in a criminal enterprise that was exploiting families and endangering children. "We have to call the police," I said. "This isn't just family drama anymore. This is criminal activity." "Agreed. But first, we need to make sure we have all the evidence properly documented, and we need to figure out how to safely disconnect these devices without alerting your sister that we've discovered what she's been doing." As Lucas worked on preserving the evidence, I found myself thinking about all those conversations Camila and I had had over the past months. Every time I'd mentioned feeling tired or stressed, every discussion about work or health or future plans, she'd been listening to all of it. No wonder she'd been so confident in her blog posts about my supposed fertility struggles. She'd been monitoring my actual conversations, looking for any mention of doctors, or medical appointments, or health concerns, and then weaving those real details into her fictional narrative. "I need to call my parents," I said suddenly. "Marina, I don't think that's a good idea until we know more about who else might be involved." "You think my parents know about this? I think we can't rule out the possibility. Your sister didn't just accidentally stumble into sophisticated surveillance technology. She either had help setting this up, or she's more tech-savvy than anyone realized." The thought that my parents might be involved in spying on me was almost too much to bear. But as I thought back over the past year, I remembered how they'd both been unusually interested in my daily routines, my health, my marriage, how they'd always seemed to know things about my life that I hadn't specifically told them. "What if they've all been in on this?" I asked. "What if the whole family has been treating me like some kind of experiment?" "We don't know that yet, but we need to be careful about who we trust until we understand the full scope of what's been happening." I thought about the Christmas dinner conversation, about how coordinated it had felt. The way everyone had focused on my supposed maternal instincts, the way they'd all seemed to be pushing the same narrative about my readiness for children. Had that been planned too? Had they all been working together to pressure me into a pregnancy that would validate Camila's online brand and provide more content for her surveillance operation? "I feel like I don't know my own family," I said, and I could hear my voice starting to break. I feel like everything I thought I knew about my relationships with these people has been a lie. Lucas stopped what he was doing and came over to sit next to me. "Hey, we're going to figure this out. We're going to stop whatever they've been doing, and we're going to make sure other families are protected too." But how do I ever trust any of them again? How do I sit at a family dinner, knowing that they might be recording everything I say? How do I have a relationship with people who've been treating my private life like their personal entertainment? "I don't know," he said honestly, "but right now, our priority has to be stopping this surveillance network and protecting the other families who might be affected." He was right, of course. This was bigger than just our family drama. There were other people being spied on other children, potentially being exploited. Other families, having their privacy violated for commercial purposes. But as I sat there looking at the camera that was still silently recording, us, still sending data to my sister's network, still waiting to alert her about any keywords related to pregnancy or fertility, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life, as I'd known it, was over. Even if we stopped the surveillance, even if we exposed what Camila had been doing, how could I ever feel safe in my own home again? How could I ever trust that my private moments were actually private? "We need to turn off all these devices," I said. "Right now, I can't stand the thought of her listening to us for one more second. If we turn them off abruptly, she'll know we've discovered what she's been doing. That might give her time to destroy evidence or warn other people in the network." "I don't care. I can't live another minute knowing that my sister is listening to every word I say in my own house." Lucas looked at me for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, you're right. Our privacy is more important than preserving evidence. We'll document what we can and then shut everything down." He spent the next few minutes taking screenshots and copying files while I went through the house unplugging every device that had come from my family. The smart speaker, the streaming device, The camera, even the Wi-Fi connected coffee maker, everything went dark. The house felt different with all those devices disconnected. Quieter somehow, but also safer. Like I could finally breathe freely in my own space again. "What happens now?" I asked as Lucas finished saving the last of the evidence files. "Now, we call the police and report what we've found. And then we figure out how to have a conversation with your family about the fact that we know they've been running surveillance on us for the better part of a year. That's going to be a fun conversation. It's going to be necessary. And Marina, yeah, whatever happens with your family, whatever we find out about who knew what and when, you don't have to forgive this. You don't have to maintain relationships with people who violated your privacy this extensively." It was permission I didn't know I'd needed to hear. Permission to be angry, to set boundaries, to prioritize my own safety and well-being over family harmony. "Thank you," I said, "for believing me, for helping me figure this out, for not trying to minimize how serious this is. This is serious. This is criminal. And whatever your sister's motivations were, whether it was for her online brand or for money, or just for the power of knowing your secrets, none of it was okay." As we prepared to call the police and begin the process of reporting what we'd discovered, I found myself thinking about all the families who might be going through this same violation without knowing it. Parents who thought they were protecting their children with high-tech monitors, not realizing they were actually exposing them to surveillance and exploitation. The scope of the betrayal was overwhelming, but so was the responsibility to make sure it stopped. Not just for us, but for everyone else who might be affected. My sister had turned my fake fertility struggles into a profitable online brand, but she'd also turned my real life into a commodity to be surveilled and sold. The first violation had hurt my feelings and damaged our relationship. The second violation was going to land her in jail. The police took our report seriously, but they told us what we already suspected. Building a criminal case would take time. Months, possibly years of investigating the surveillance network, tracking down other victims, gathering evidence that would hold up in court. In the meantime, they advised us to consult with a civil attorney about our options for immediate legal action. That's how Lucas and I found ourselves sitting in the law office of Patricia Chen 3 days later, a folder full of screenshots and network logs spread across her conference table. Patricia was exactly the kind of attorney you'd want on your side in a situation like this. Sharp, experienced, and clearly appalled by what we discovered. "This is one of the most extensive privacy violations I've seen in my 20 years of practice," she said, reviewing the evidence Lucas had compiled. "The combination of illegal surveillance, identity theft for commercial purposes, and fraud makes this a very serious case." "Rolf, what are our options?" I asked. "Realistically, you have several paths forward. You can pursue criminal charges, which the police are already investigating. You can file a civil lawsuit for damages, including invasion of privacy, emotional distress, and fraud. Or you can try to resolve this privately with your family first." "What would you recommend?" Patricia leaned back in her chair, considering. "Given that family relationships are involved, I'd usually suggest trying to resolve things privately first. But the scope of what your sister has done, the blog, the donations, the surveillance network, this goes far beyond typical family conflict. This is organized criminal activity." Lucas nodded. "We're not just talking about Marina's privacy. There are other families being surveilled, possibly children being exploited." "Exactly. Which is why I think you need to proceed with both civil and criminal action, regardless of what your family says. But before you do anything else, you need to confront them directly and give them a chance to come clean about the full extent of what they've been doing." "You think my parents are involved too?" Based on the technical sophistication of this operation, and the fact that multiple devices in your home were compromised over an extended period, it's unlikely your sister was acting alone. Someone helped her install and configure these surveillance systems. The thought that my parents had been actively participating in spying on me was still almost too much to process. But Patricia was right. The scope of the operation suggested coordination and planning that went beyond what one person could accomplish alone. If we confront them, And they admit to everything. Does that help our case? Lucas asked. It depends on what they're willing to do to make things right. If they immediately shut down the surveillance network, return any money they've made, delete all the false content, and cooperate with the investigation into other victims that could influence how we proceed. And if they don't, then we file both criminal and civil cases and let the legal system handle it. We scheduled the confrontation for that Saturday. I wanted it to happen at my parents' house on their turf so they couldn't claim they felt ambushed or uncomfortable. Lucas insisted on bringing his laptop with all the evidence just in case they tried to deny what we'd discovered. I barely slept the night before. I kept imagining different versions of how the conversation might go, from my family breaking down in tears and apologizing to them attacking us for violating their privacy by investigating the devices they'd given us. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold, with the kind of January weather that makes you want to stay inside and avoid difficult conversations. But Lucas and I drove to my parents' house anyway, both of us quiet and tense during the 20-minute ride. Whatever happens, Lucas said as we pulled into the driveway, remember that we're the ones who were wronged here. Don't let them turn this around and make us feel guilty for discovering what they were doing. I know, I just keep hoping there's some explanation that makes this less awful than it seems. Marina, there's no explanation that would make this okay. They've been spying on us for months, lying about your medical condition, and potentially exploiting other families. No matter what their reasons were, this was criminal behavior. He was right, of course, but part of me still wanted to believe that my family was capable of redemption, that there was some way to salvage our relationships after this. Mom answered the door with her usual warm smile, which faltered slightly when she saw our serious expressions. Marina, Lucas, I wasn't expecting you today. Is everything all right? We need to talk to you and Dad, and Camila if she's here. She's here with Ethan. They're in the living room. Come in. Come in. Can I get you coffee? I just made a fresh pot. No, thank you, I said. This isn't a social visit. Mom's face immediately shifted to concern. What's wrong? Did something happen? We'll explain once everyone's together. We followed her into the living room, where Dad was reading the newspaper in his usual chair, and Camila was on the floor playing blocks with Ethan. The scene looked so normal, so peaceful that for a moment I almost convinced myself we'd made a mistake somehow. Hey, you guys, Camila looked up with a bright smile. What a nice surprise, Ethan, look who's here. Ethan abandoned his blocks and ran over to hug my legs. Aunt Marina, Uncle Lucas, did you come to play? Hi, buddy, I said, giving him a hug while trying to keep my voice normal. We need to talk to the grown-ups for a little while, okay? We actually need to talk privately, Lucas said. Would it be possible for Ethan to play in another room? The request immediately put everyone on alert. Dad set down his newspaper and I could see Camilla's smile becoming more forced. Of course, Mom said quickly. Ethan, sweetie, why don't you take your blocks up to Grandpa's office? You can build your tower on the big desk. Can I take the dinosaurs too? Yes, you can take whatever toys you want. Jake appeared from the kitchen and helped gather Ethan's toys, clearly sensing the tension in the room. Come on, buddy. Let's go build the biggest tower ever. Once Ethan was safely upstairs, and Jake had closed the office door, the four of us sat in the living room in uncomfortable silence. I could feel my heart pounding as I tried to figure out how to start this conversation. So, Dad said finally, what's this about? Lucas opened his laptop and set it on the coffee table. We discovered something disturbing about the gifts you've given us over the past year, specifically the electronic devices. What do you mean? Camila asked, but I could see her face starting to pale. I mean that every electronic device you've given us has been modified for surveillance purposes, Lucas said, his voice calm but firm. The smart speaker, the streaming device, and especially the camera you gave us for Christmas. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched my family's faces, looking for signs of surprise, confusion, denial. What I saw instead was guilt and fear. That's ridiculous, Camila said, but her voice lacked conviction. Those are just normal consumer devices. No, they're not. Lucas turned his laptop screen toward them, showing the network logs he'd captured. This is data showing that the camera you gave us was pre-configured to connect to your home Wi-Fi network and send recordings to external servers. It was also programmed with keyword detection to alert you whenever Marina said words like pregnant, doctor, or fertility. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God! You've been spying on us, I said, my voice shaking despite my efforts to stay calm. For months, you've been listening to our private conversations, monitoring our daily routines, gathering information about our personal life. It's not what it looks like, Camilla said quickly. I can explain. Then explain, Lucas said. Explain why you installed surveillance equipment in our home. Explain why you've been blogging about Marina's fake fertility struggles. Explain why you're making money off of lies about our personal life. Dad was staring at the laptop screen with an expression of shock and horror. Camilla, what is this? What have you done? I was trying to help. Camilla's voice rose defensively. Marina, you were so closed off about your personal life, so private about everything. I knew you and Lucas wanted kids, but you weren't talking about it with anyone. I thought if I could understand what you were going through, I could be more supportive. By spying on me. By staying informed, by knowing when you needed support, when you were having a hard time, when you might want to talk to someone who understood. But I wasn't having fertility problems, I said. We weren't even trying to get pregnant. You made up an entire medical condition and built an online brand around it. I knew you would eventually, Camilla said, her desperation becoming more obvious. I could see how you were with Ethan, how much you loved being around kids. I knew it was just a matter of time before you started trying, and I wanted to be ready to support you. Support me by lying about me online, by accepting donations from strangers, based on fake stories about my medical issues. The blog wasn't supposed to get so popular. I started it as a way to process my own feelings about wanting to help you. But then, people started reaching out, sharing their own stories, asking for advice. I realized I could actually help people who were going through real struggles. Help them with fake expertise based on lies about my life. I researched everything. I spent hundreds of hours learning about infertility, reading about treatments, understanding the emotional journey. The advice I was giving was real, even if my personal story wasn't exactly accurate. Lucas leaned forward. Camilla, you committed fraud. You accepted money from people under false pretenses. That's a crime. I donated most of the money to real fertility organizations. I only kept enough to cover the costs of running the blog and doing research. That doesn't make it legal, I said. And it doesn't make it right. Mom finally spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. Camila, how long has this been going on? Since last spring. I started noticing that Marina was being really secretive about her health, about doctor's appointments. She seemed stressed and tired a lot. I thought maybe she was trying to get pregnant and not wanting to jinx it by talking about it. So you decided to spy on her instead of just asking her directly. Dad's voice was sharp with anger. I tried asking, but she kept deflecting, changing the subject. And then when I started the blog and people began responding to it, sharing their own stories, I realized how much good I could do by documenting this journey. Whose journey? I asked, because it certainly wasn't mine. You were documenting a fictional journey based on lies and surveillance. Camilla's composure finally cracked and tears started streaming down her face. I was trying to help you, Marina. I was trying to be the sister you needed. The sister I needed wouldn't spy on me. The sister I needed wouldn't lie about my medical condition on the internet. The sister I needed would respect my privacy and my choices. But you never make the right choices. The words burst out of Camilla with a force that shocked everyone in the room. You have everything. A great husband, a beautiful home, financial stability, unlimited opportunities, and you just waste it all by being too careful, too analytical, too afraid to take risks. Excuse me. You could have had kids years ago, but you kept waiting for the perfect time. You could have been happy, but instead you overthink everything and hold yourself back from the life you're supposed to be living. The life I'm supposed to be living. I could feel my own anger rising now. According to who? According to you, according to anyone who can see what's obvious. You're meant to be a mother, Marina. Everyone can see it except you. And instead of embracing that, you spend years analyzing and planning and making excuses. They're not excuses, they're choices. My choices about my own life. Well, your choices were taking too long, and other people who actually need support were suffering while you sat around overthinking everything. The room went completely silent. Even Mom, who usually tried to smooth over any family conflict, seemed stunned by what Camila had just revealed. So, this was never about supporting me, I said slowly. This was about you deciding that I was living my life wrong and taking it upon yourself to correct that. I was trying to help you see what you were missing. By violating my privacy, lying about my medical condition, and exploiting other people's real struggles for your own benefit. I helped those people. I provided them with resources and support and community based on lies. Based on fictional experiences that you made up using surveillance of my real life. Lucas closed his laptop and looked directly at my parents. Were you aware of what Camila was doing? Mom and Dad exchanged glances, and I could see them having some kind of silent communication. We knew about the blog, Dad said finally. Camila told us she was writing about supporting families through fertility struggles. We thought it was a nice way for her to process her feelings about wanting to help you and Lucas. And the surveillance equipment? Another long pause. I helped install the smart speaker, Dad admitted. Camila said it was a surprise gift, but that she wanted to make sure it was set up properly to connect to your Wi-Fi. I thought I was just helping with tech support. Dad, I said, feeling like my heart was breaking. You helped install surveillance equipment in my home. I didn't know that's what it was. Camila told me she wanted to be able to send you music playlists and reminders about family events. I thought it was a sweet gesture. What about the other devices, the streaming device, the camera? I set up the streaming device, Mom said quietly. But again, I thought it was just a gift. Camila said she wanted you to be able to access family photos and videos easily. And the camera? I didn't help with that one, Dad said. But Camila did ask me a lot of questions about networking and Wi-Fi setup. She said she wanted to make sure the gift would work properly. I looked at my parents, trying to reconcile the people I'd known and loved my entire life with the people who had just admitted to helping install surveillance equipment in my home. So you all knew about the blog, you all helped with the surveillance setup, and none of you thought to ask me how I felt about being the subject of this project. We thought we were helping, Mom said, tears starting to fall. We thought we were being supportive. Supportive would have been respecting my privacy. Supportive would have been accepting my timeline instead of trying to manipulate it. We weren't trying to manipulate anything, Camila protested. We were trying to be ready to support you when you needed it. You were trying to control my narrative. You were trying to force me into a life script that you had written for me. Because we love you, because we want you to be happy. I am happy. I was happy before you started spying on me. I was happy before you started lying about me online. And I was happy before you decided that my life choices were your business to manage. But you could be so much happier if you just stopped overthinking everything and embraced the life you're meant to have. There is no life I'm meant to have. There's only the life I choose to live, and the life I've chosen is perfectly fine without your input or manipulation. Camila wiped her eyes and looked at me with a mixture of sadness and frustration. Marina, you've always had everything handed to you. The perfect grades, the perfect husband, the perfect career. And you just take it all for granted instead of building something meaningful with it. What I've built is meaningful to me. My marriage is meaningful to me. My work is meaningful to me. My quiet, private life is meaningful to me. But it could be so much more. According to you, but you don't get to decide what more looks like for my life. Lucas stood up from the couch. This conversation is going in circles. Here's what's going to happen. Camila is going to immediately shut down the blog, delete all the social media posts about Marina's fictional medical issues, and return every penny she's made from this fraud. I can't just delete everything overnight, Camila said. There are people who depend on that community who find support through the blog. Then you're going to find a way to transition them to legitimate resources run by people who actually have relevant experience. You're going to be honest about the fact that your platform was based on false information. That will destroy my credibility. No one will trust anything I say about fertility support ever again. Good, I said, because you shouldn't be offering fertility support. You don't have any relevant experience or expertise. I have a year of research and hundreds of conversations with people who are actually going through this. Research and conversations that you obtain through fraud and deception. Mom reached out toward me. Marina, honey, can't we find a way to work this out as a family? Can't we find a solution that doesn't involve lawyers and police reports? I don't know, Mom. Can we find a solution that involves all of you acknowledging that what you did was wrong and taking concrete steps to make sure it never happens again? Of course we can acknowledge that mistakes were made, Dad said. Mistakes, Lucas's voice was sharp. These weren't mistakes. These were deliberate choices to violate Marina's privacy and exploit her personal life for Camila's benefit. I wasn't exploiting anyone, Camila said. I was trying to build something meaningful, something that could help people, built on lies about my life, built on the understanding that you would eventually want kids and that I could help you through that process when the time came. But the time didn't come. We still aren't trying to get pregnant. Your entire premise was wrong from the beginning. But you will want kids eventually, right? I mean, you're not seriously planning to never have children. I looked at her, realizing that even now, even after everything we'd discovered and discussed, she still couldn't accept that my reproductive choices were mine to make. Camila, whether or not Lucas and I ever have children is not your business. It's not something you get to have an opinion about, plan for, or try to influence. It's completely and entirely between Lucas and me. But family planning affects the whole family. No, it doesn't. My uterus is not a family democracy. Marina, Mom said gently, I think what Camila is trying to say is that we all want to see you happy and fulfilled. And I'm telling all of you that I am happy and fulfilled, right now with my life exactly as it is. But wouldn't you be happier with children? Maybe, maybe not, but that's for me to figure out, not for you to decide. The conversation continued for another hour, going in circles as my family tried to justify their actions, and I tried to make them understand the scope of their violation. Finally, Lucas stood up and started packing his laptop. We're done here, he said. Camila, you have 1 week to shut down the blog, delete the social media posts, and provide documentation showing that you've returned the money you made. If you don't, we're filing both criminal and civil lawsuits. You're really going to destroy your own family over this? Camila asked. You destroyed this family when you decided to spy on us and lie about us online, I said. I'm just refusing to pretend that what you did was okay. Marina, please, Mom said. Can't we find a way to move past this? Can't we find a way to rebuild trust? Maybe someday, but not until there are real consequences for what happened and real changes to make sure it never happens again. What kind of changes? Complete transparency about any surveillance equipment or devices. No more gifts that connect to the internet. No more blog posts or social media content about my personal life without my explicit permission. And therapy, all of you need to work with someone to understand why you thought this behavior was acceptable. You're demanding that we go to therapy. I'm suggesting it because I genuinely don't understand how 3 adults I've known and loved my entire life could think that spying on me was an act of love. As we gathered our things to leave, I felt a strange sense of finality, like I was closing a chapter of my life that I'd never be able to reopen the same way. Marina, Camila called as we reached the front door. I really was trying to help you. Everything I did came from a place of love. I believe that you thought you were helping, I said, but love doesn't justify violation. Good intentions don't make illegal surveillance okay. And wanting the best for someone doesn't give you the right to control their narrative. So what happens now? Now, you figure out how to rebuild credibility and trust that you destroyed. And Lucas and I figure out how to move forward with our lives without worrying about who might be watching or listening. The drive home was quiet. Lucas and I were both emotionally exhausted, and I think we both needed time to process what had just happened. "How do you feel?" he asked as we pulled into our driveway. Sad, angry, relieved, confused, all at the same time. "Do you think they'll actually do what we asked?" "I think they'll do the minimum they have to do to avoid legal consequences. But I don't think they really understand why what they did was so wrong." "What do you want to do about the relationship going forward?" I thought about it as we walked into our house, our private surveillance-free house where we could finally have conversations without worrying about who might be listening. "I don't know yet," I said. "I need time to figure out if there's a way to rebuild trust after something like this." "That's fair. There's no rush to make those decisions." Over the next few weeks, Camila did comply with most of our demands. The blog disappeared, the social media posts were deleted, and she provided documentation showing that she'd donated the money she'd made to legitimate fertility organizations. But there was no real apology, no acknowledgement of the full scope of what she'd done, no genuine remorse. My parents tried to maintain contact, sending occasional texts and emails asking how we were doing. But every interaction felt strained and artificial, like we were all pretending that a fundamental trust hadn't been broken. The police investigation continued, eventually leading to the discovery of a larger surveillance network that had been exploiting dozens of families. Camila cooperated with the investigation in exchange for reduced charges, but the damage to other families was extensive. As spring turned to summer, Lucas and I found ourselves talking more seriously about the future we wanted to build together. The experience with my family had clarified something important. We didn't want to wait for other people's approval or timeline to make decisions about our lives. "I've been thinking," I said one evening as we sat on our back porch watching the sunset, "about kids. Yeah, not because of anything Camila said or did, but because this whole experience made me realize that I want to build a family with you based on our choices, our timeline, our values." "What kind of family?" "I don't know yet. Maybe biological kids, maybe adoption, maybe fostering. But I want to explore our options without any pressure, or surveillance, or outside interference." "I'd like that too." We started researching different paths to parenthood, taking our time to understand the options and think about what felt right for us. When we finally decided to pursue adoption, it was a decision we made together privately without any input from my family. The adoption process was long and complicated, involving background checks, home visits, interviews, and mountains of paperwork. But it was also hopeful and exciting in a way that felt completely different from the pressure and manipulation we'd experienced before. 8 months later, on a cold February morning, I was sitting at my antique writing desk, the one Lucas had given me for Christmas the year before, when the phone rang. "Marina, this is Sarah from the adoption agency. I have some wonderful news for you." My heart immediately started racing. "What kind of news?" "We have a match. A 3-year-old girl named Emma who needs a loving home. The caseworker thinks you and Lucas would be perfect for her." I could barely breathe. "Tell me about her." "She's been in foster care for about a year after her parents' rights were terminated. She's smart, funny, a little shy at first, but very affectionate once she warms up to people. The foster family says she loves books and drawing and playing with toy cars. When could we meet her? If you're interested, we could arrange a meeting for this weekend." After I hung up, I sat at my desk for a long time, thinking about the journey that had brought us to this moment. A year ago, my family had been pressuring me to have children according to their timeline, spying on me to monitor my progress, building an online brand around my supposed fertility struggles. Now, Lucas and I were about to meet the daughter we'd chosen to adopt through a process that had been entirely our own. That afternoon, a package arrived in the mail with no return address. Inside was a small handcrafted wooden toy, a little girl holding a book. The craftsmanship was beautiful, delicate, obviously made with love and care. There was no note, but I recognized my mother's handiwork. She'd been making similar toys for Ethan since he was born. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it felt like an acknowledgement. A tentative olive branch, a recognition that we were building our family on our own terms. I set the toy on the bookshelf in what would soon be Emma's room next to the children's books we'd been collecting and the stuffed animals we'd chosen together. 3 weeks later, Emma came home with us. She was exactly as Sarah had described. Smart, funny, a little cautious at first, but quick to warm up when she realized she was safe and loved. The first night she slept in our house, I lay awake listening to her quiet breathing through the baby monitor we'd bought ourselves. A simple audio device with no internet connectivity, no surveillance capabilities, no ability to transmit data to anyone outside our home. "How does it feel?" Lucas whispered in the darkness. "Like coming home," I said. "Like everything we went through was worth it to get to this moment." "Do you think you'll ever rebuild things with your family?" "Maybe someday, but right now I'm focused on the family we're building, the family that chose each other, the family that's built on love and respect and privacy and trust." 6 months later, as I watched Emma play in our backyard while Lucas pushed her on the swing set we'd installed, I thought about how different this story had turned out from anything my family could have planned or predicted. We hadn't just lost a family when we discovered their surveillance and lies. We'd gained one built on honesty, choice, and mutual respect. And now our daughter was arriving soon. Not the biological child my sister had been trying to monitor and monetize, but the chosen child who would complete the family Lucas and I had built entirely on our own terms. The surveillance equipment was long gone, the fake blog posts deleted, the manufactured drama finally over. What remained was something much more valuable, a quiet, private life filled with real love, real choice, and real privacy. We didn't just lose a family. We gained one built on love and respect. And now our daughter is arriving soon. If this story showed you that sometimes the people closest to us cross lines, we never imagined you're not alone. Have you ever discovered that family members were violating your privacy or making decisions about your life without your consent? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if stories like this resonate with you, hit that subscribe button for more real-life drama that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about family boundaries.